across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. It's just fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much for your company. Thank you very much also to maintenance sorting this sodding egg on out. I mean, I know it's not been as hot as it has been, but yeah, little glass boxes, not fun without aircon. But anyway, poor old Jessa is going to go recover outside, and I'm with you for the next 3 hours. Unfortunately, Ian Collins is poorly. If you were watching yesterday, poor Ian Collins had to go off sick, but we have a valiant replacement for him. We wish him very well. Hope he gets better soon. Now, I want to know, well, what your thoughts are on the big events of yesterday. Of course, we had Andy Burnham coming in as Prime Minister. We had, Keir Starmer leaving. We had some absolutely ruthless sackings of very senior figures. Rachel Reeves, David Lammy, Lord Hermit getting yesterday. And then we had the march of the new arrivals. Is it the end to factionalism under Andy Burnham? Is it the march of the Northerners, particularly the Mansterites? Well, we'll be discussing all of Andy Burnham's new appointments. What do they tell us about what his priorities are going to be? In particular, that surprise move, John Healey, who resigned as Defence Secretary just 6 weeks ago from Keir Starmer's cabinet, being appointed as Chancellor. Many had thought it was a dead heat between Ed Miliband and Shabana Mahmood. They wandered up Downing Street arm in arm. A little bit of game playing and drama for the crowds outside, I think. But does this mean, of course, that we will finally get that spending on defence? Look, a bit bad, wouldn't it, if he was complaining that the Treasury wouldn't give the money, and now he's in charge of the Treasury and he doesn't actually boost our defence spending to what it needs to be. Meanwhile, net zero zealot Ed Miliband has been made Foreign Secretary. I'm sure that will go down terribly well with Donald Trump. He'll be off bleating his nonsense about global climate change at every single summit. But also, first announcement today, soon after 6 a.m. Andy Burnham, as he said, he wanted to basically, take, the burden off people, ease our cost of living, give people a little bit of breathing space. Well, he's done that, he says, by removing VAT. You're currently at 5% on electricity bills. As of October, it will go down to 0%. That will take a whopping £45 off the average household home energy bill. That works out as 86 pence a week. Now, 45 quid is still 45 quid, but given that the energy bills are going to go up in October anyway, when the next energy price cap goes up, what with the Iran war still going on, that's going to be swallowed up very, very quickly. And I don't know how poor you'd have to be for 86p to be the difference between financially, we're going to be all right now. It's been a struggle, but financially, we're going to be OK because we've got 86p off our energy bills as of October. If that's where we're going to be in terms of the big changes, is that going to be enough? I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to hear from you. What does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about his priorities for governing Britain? All your reaction to who had to go and who got brought in, the promotions, the demotions, there have been a few of those as well. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say, joining me for the chat today, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning.
Morning.
It was rather good fun yesterday. I have to say, I did enjoy the drama over the Chancellor's role. But the thing that always stuns me in these scenarios, I mean, Andy Burnham was there around, 12:40 to give his speech. And then it was hours and hours. I mean, I think Wes Streeting didn't get appointed as Defence Secretary until after I'd gone to bed, for goodness sake. And these things take an extraordinary length of time. Does that suggest he didn't actually have a plan about what he was going to do, and it was all a bit last minute, and someone said no to one job and everything had to be shuffled around? Or do you think he was just sort of, he was busy making, you know, having international calls from the likes of Trump and Zelensky, and he was busy doing other stuff?
Well, it's probably a bit of column A and a bit of column B. I mean, as ever, there's a lot of horse trading that goes on behind the scenes. We know that Rachel Reeves, for instance, was offered something that she then turned down.
Well, no, she claims she was offered something, and the word is it was defence, which would have been hilarious. Are you suggesting that
Rachel Reeves' word is not gospel?
Well, it depends. Is it written on her CV or not?
That's a very good point. So there's always a bit of that going on in the background. At the same time, it's something that, broadly speaking, seems to have come off more or less without a hitch, and Westminster lobby journalists were certainly treated to the drip feed of announcements throughout the night, which allows them to keep firing up their X accounts. I mean, there's not a lot in there that would reassure us that we're going to be on a much better path, although it is nice to see the sort of Lammy, Reeves, Hermer triumvirate of
Darren Jones has already come back fighting.
He's very upset.
I mean, I have to say, I was a little bit too jubilant about some of those departures. I mean, also, everyone was this has been the privilege of my life. Everyone got AI to write their resignation letters, didn't they? I love also, unless you're going to be resigning like John Healey did from government at a point when, you know, you're considered a high flyer and you're in the role and you're resigning on a matter of principle, in which case, yeah, a 2-page letter, absolutely acceptable. Otherwise, sorry, mate, you're being sacked. No one wants to read your 2-page letter about all your achievements in office.
It's not going to be etched into the pages of history, is it, frankly?
It's not.
And it is amazing them walking around, including Keir Starmer, of course, in his address yesterday, saying that they've left the country in a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are you out 2 years into a term then?
Yeah.
Pushed out by your own...
Exactly. Well, look, before we talk about the various different cabinet members and you know, who's up, who's down, let's play a little clip, just 2 or 3 of the little... The bits that Andy Burnham had to say yesterday, without an autocue. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Isn't he clever, being able to speak about things he cares about without an autocue? I mean, I'm wondering where my autocue is and my lectern is. So let's have a little watch to listen to what he did have to say outside Downing Street.
I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be. Later this year, I will bring forward a new plan for Britain, a 10-year plan, laying out a path from where we are now to where I believe we all want Britain to be, wherever we're coming from, whatever party we support. But I can do something to give people some breathing space now, some help with the cost of living. And I will set out some of those measures starting tomorrow, including how we pay for them. Let's build a new national sense of unity, of common purpose and positivity. Let us make this the moment when Britain starts to believe again, the moment we bring back hope.
Which is all lovely. And I don't know about you, I'm feeling very hopeful today, Tom.
Who could be against hope? I mean, I was actually quite...
I don't know, I like to think the boys at Spiked might well be against hope.
Well, I mean, certainly against airy platitudes about hope in the absence of any real political substance. I was quite struck by how dull this speech was, not least because his one
empty
calling card... So empty. I mean, Andy Burnham is quite an empty political figure for reasons we might get into, but the fact that the phrases circuit breaker, breathing space, these are not things which are going to inspire or create any sense of relief amongst the public. And the best anyone had to say about it was that he didn't use an autocue, which used to go without saying with politicians, whether it's in Parliament or outside
we used to have politicians who could do that. I thought it was also
anymore.
fascinating that he said, you know, his first instruction is going to be to end rough sleeping. Well, I mean, you can instruct all you want, mate. Yeah. He tended to end rough sleep. Then it became a pledge, then it became a promise, then it became a target or something. He said he'd do that in Manchester. Rough sleeping went down for everywhere across the country during the pandemic when they basically just opened up homes for people. And also we didn't have a load of arrivals from abroad, so some of those properties were available. And now it's gone up, but included in Manchester. He didn't solve the problem in Manchester. Yeah. So, yes. But also, the problem is not providing homes for these people. There are myriad problems that people who sadly are on the streets are dealing with. And it's not such a simple fix as, oh, here's a home. And by the way, if you've got...
It's just political will, as
It's
they
just
like
political
to say.
will, but also, you know, if you've got a problem with the fact that people haven't got a home homeless, I mean, people who are, living, families living in B&Bs and stuff, maybe stop giving homes to illegal migrants. I don't know. I'm going out on a limb here. Maybe don't import hundreds and hundreds of thousands of foreign workers to do jobs which British people could and should be doing, and therefore using up extra housing. Okay. Just floating some ideas here. It's almost like there's no joined-up thinking, which there hasn't been at all for any government, I think, for the last 10, 20 years. But let's talk about some of the big appointments. I mean, Rachel Reeves out. Yes. John Healey in as Chancellor. This was very much like non-faction. He was going to upset everybody with Mahmood. He was going to upset everybody with Ed Miliband, different sides. John Healey, very much non-factional. He used to work at the Treasury for 5 years under Gordon Brown. Don't know if that bodes well. He is a lefty. People forget that always, when you stand there in your suit and your tie and you're with all the military people and you're talking in a very sombre voice and he's a very get-on-with-it man, and everyone takes, it's very easy to have a lot of gravitas in that job. By all it's a good bloke. I've got no axe to grind at all with him. However, he is a complete lefty when it comes to his economics.
And it'd be interesting to see how that pans out, just because the key problem for Andy Burnham is that he wants to signal that he's going in a more left-wing, or at least soft left direction.
Yeah, what is this soft left thing?
I mean, it's essentially the faction Labour Party that can't really decide whether it's one thing one day or another thing the next. It kind of thinks of itself as, defines itself against the sort of Blairites.
They're well-dressed Corbynites.
Yeah, but at the same time thinks, that Corbyn thing maybe went a little bit too far and people got upset with us, and maybe that was a mistake. It's the sort of muddled middle of the Labour Party, as far as I can discern, for whom like just virtue signalling and infinity welfare are the closest thing they've got to an ideology. Yeah. But beyond that, it's kind of quite vibes-based, I think. But nevertheless, this is the contradiction. We saw it in his speech yesterday. On the one hand, he wanted to say we need to regain our stability. On the other hand, this is going to be the biggest break with politics for 40 years. Yeah. Which is it?
Yeah, it can't be both. But again, this announcement on the VAT or domestic electricity bills, I don't think there should be VAT on a necessity like heating your home and lighting your home. So I'm all in favour of that. I think that'll be very hard to ever undo any future Chancellor. So that's a good thing. But you've still got all these mad net zero subsidies which are boosting costs of bills. We've still got the Iran war. That's out of his control at the current time. If there is going to be some of the net zero policy madness ended and we're going to see some sort of drilling, whether or not new licences, but the licences that had actually already been granted before Labour came into power, and there are actually a lot of them for getting North Sea oil and gas out as a long-term policy, 100% behind that. And that wouldn't have been possible with Ed Miliband still in that job. Ed Miliband is Foreign Secretary. He's going to be trumping his mad climate change nonsense around the world. Donald Trump, him, I can't see that being a match made in heaven. I'm just trying to think like what he actually said about him, and it wasn't very nice. I think back a little while ago, he's the same like Sadiq Khan and others who said all these things, but
there's always a tweet.
He said Donald Trump was a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper. Now, the thing is, I don't actually disagree with any of that, and I've said I would vote no. I mean, he's absolutely. There's loads of evidence about him being racist when he was a property, magnate just in New York. Certainly misogynistic. His attitude towards women is absolutely repulsive and disgusting. And he is a self-confessed raper. He said he grabs women by the part of their body between the legs without asking their permission. I think those are fair. I think those are fair criticisms of Donald Trump. I don't think people who voted for Donald Trump voted for him because he was a good, wonderful Christian man, family man. I mean, for goodness sake. But I wonder how easy Ed Miliband will find it to get on with him. And given we've got the G7 summit, it's going to be in Manchester next year, Donald Trump will be coming. And
I think a politician, even a Prime Minister, having previously had some crosswords to say about Donald Trump, hasn't necessarily been a hindrance to them getting along previously. Because if that was the case, then Donald Trump wouldn't have got along with anyone. Most of the Republican Party.
Yes,
like
true.
Other sort of world leaders.
I mean, he's appointed people he's slagged off their wives.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, he almost, I think, takes a certain level of pleasure in watching those people have to sort of kiss the ring, even having previously sounded off about him. I think the issue with Ed Miliband is, you look what he's done more recently. He, if the reports are to be believed, was part of the faction within Cabinet who were very, very against any use of British air bases for the Iran war, even in a defensive capacity, was part of that faction.
He's the one who basically led the move. But also bearing in mind, when Ed Miliband was Labour leader, I know, still bizarre, but he was the one who led the vote against Britain taking action in Syria against Assad. I mean, it's just, again, he's just one of those stupid champagne socialist I'm anti-war. Oh, well, that makes you a nice person. I'm anti-war. Well, yes, we're all anti-war until you have to fight a war. Until you have to save people's lives.
Quite. And also just the sense of beyond sort of that reflexive sort of position, what is he really going to lay out here? I think that appointment, more than anything else, shows that Andy Burnham is just not really interested in the rest of the world, even though the rest of the world is very much interested in us.
But lots of people may welcome that, never hear Keir, but again, very, very easy. It's very, very easy for every... It's like American presidents. Not a single American president's been elected on anything other than isolated, America first, no forever wars, all that. What's the stuff that Donald Trump has said is pretty much what every other president of every political hue has said. Yeah, well, it doesn't work out that way for very long, particularly for the Americans, but also for Britain. Interesting that Shabana Mahmood was touted as Chancellor. She hasn't got much economic experience, so I think that would have been a bad move for her. Very unpopular, though, with the vast majority of lefty backbenchers, her immigration reforms, which are minimal at best. I mean... but she stays in her job. Pat McFadden stays in his job as Work and Pensions Secretary. Lisa Nandy stays as Culture Secretary. So it's interesting they stay in their job. What I thought was interesting also was Yvette Cooper, demoted from Foreign Secretary, one of the great officers of state, to Health. Bit of a worry. She's played all the mad, not quite sure what a woman is, nonsense. She's a problem there. Interesting that Lucy Powell, who's Deputy Labour leader, she was rewarded with Education Secretary. Maybe she wanted to... Deputy Prime Minister, didn't get that, but she's taken that job from Bridget Phillipson, who's lost that part of her job but stays in Cabinet as Equalities Minister. And again, appalling trans maiden, I think they're known as now, who has totally betrayed women on that Supreme Court ruling on biological sex. What's really interesting is Wes Streeting as Defence Secretary, Angela Rayner back as Housing Secretary, her old job, after resigning of an unpaid 40 grand stamp duty, which she's now paid, but extraordinarily didn't face a fine. You or I would have had a fine. Not you and I would have paid our sodding stamp duty. And fascinating, the most senior woman other than Shabana Mahmood is Louise Haigh, as First Secretary of State. This Cabinet Office role, you're a Cabinet Office, Secretary of State of the Cabinet Office. But basically, this is the sort of overarching job, isn't it? Sort of overseeing, bringing lots of government together. She, of course, is a convicted fraudster and had to resign, got sacked as Transport Secretary under Keir Starmer only a year into office because she'd lied and hadn't said she had any convictions when she had a conviction for fraud, which involved her as quite a senior figure in a company, basically claiming that after she was mugged that her BlackBerry phone had been stolen. And then it was turned on in her home and the signal was found and it hadn't been stolen. She said this was a complete mistake, complete error. But 3 or 4 sources, I think, in the company had said that actually she had done this 2 or 3 times. This was not a one-off and she did get convicted. She lied about that. So we've got a convicted fraudster overseeing the running of British government and someone who doesn't pay their taxes for housing purchases back at housing. That tells you quite a lot, doesn't it? I
think it does. I think as much as anything else, it also says about just the dearth of talent. Like, if there were so many people knocking down the door in order to fill the role of Deputy Prime Minister or someone who's going to be sort of Secretary of State in that sense, then you wouldn't necessarily have to reach for the convicted fraudster. Or indeed someone like Lucy Powell, who I know is close to Andy Burnham politically, another Manchester MP, someone who's certainly, although she likes to deny it, kind of leading the coup on his behalf in so many respects, but is a really insubstantial political figure, to put it lightly.
Well, she's done virtually all the interviews in the last week, and what did you just... You said nothing. You've spoken for 10 minutes and said nothing.
No, it's remarkable. And when she does say anything of note, it's deriding the grooming gang scandal and calling it a dog whistle. Yeah. So maybe she's had a wings clip for that reason. But this is the thing. I don't even mean to necessarily single her out. Top to bottom, really, this is the problem this Labour Party has. It's just the lack of available talent in any particular position, which just doesn't fill you with confidence. You can play the game of cabinet musical chairs, but at the same time, do we really think anything's going to radically
and the
improve?
real thing is, an awful lot of these people, this talk of the soft left. Like the new Energy Secretary, who used to work for Ed Miliband when he was Energy Secretary, Miata van Bulle, economist, proper full-on lefty. And these are the people. And again, there's already talk about rent hikes, wealth taxes, the so-called mansion tax, all of this stuff. But rent controls, what The thing that has been tried in loads of places, same as wealth taxes, which don't work. The your rent controls do. What they do is they dampen down the cost of rents for the people who got their rent controlled. And guess what landlords do? They sell up because they can't get enough rent in to cover their mortgages, and they're no longer making a profit. It's not a good investment. And they also, usually with these scenarios, can't get tenants out ever, which you should be able to do, because it's not their property, it's yours, as long as you give reasonable notice on the contract. So they sell up, fewer properties are available, and guess what happens then? Rent goes up. I mean, and it's happened every single place it has been tried. It does not work.
Yeah, no, and the fact that not only this Labour Party, but obviously the Green Party as well, are reviving ideas like this, I think just shows that sort of virtue signalling, things that sound good, feel good, are taking priority over. Rent controls are a great example. Every serious economist, sort of left or right really, will admit that they don't work. And everywhere that they've been tried, they don't work, can't work, and have these second-order, quite disastrous effects. But it's just something which makes a bit of a statement. It sets down a bit of a marker. And you're absolutely right about Fietta Fambulo. I mean, she used to run the New Economics Foundation, which is a very sort of Corbynista...
I mean, properly full-on lefty.
...org. And this is the tilt that we're seeing. Whether or not it actually manifests in policy is a slightly different question, because he is hamstrung by the fact he doesn't have his own mandate. And the more he tries to push the boat out on policy, the more he might find himself running around.
Keir Starmer definitely had a mandate, apart from the fact that he was very vague in what change he was going to do. He broke his own manifesto pledge on raising national insurance, for employers. Still a tax on ordinary working families. That's who it hit, in terms of lack of jobs and lack of pay rises as a result of that. But again, all this stuff, I mean, you know, most of the things that actually got Keir Starmer in trouble were things that were not in the manifesto. You know, digital ID and things, which, by the way, dropping the digital ID, that apparently is going to pay for this year that cut in VAT on domestic energy bills. Except even Darren Jones, who used to work at the Treasury, who's just been sacked, has pointed out that was basically uncosted. Oh, nice of you to tell us that now, Darren, eh? And these things, you know, they're only costed for a bit. They haven't got all the full money. But it's like the defence budget. Even the defence budget that is inadequately raising the amount we're spending on defence to not even remotely enough is not funded. I mean, this is just an absolute joke.
I mean, that is one thing about the Healey appointment which makes you think that at least where defence spending is concerned...
that is very reassuring.
Given he resigned over that matter, and given the fact that he is now in post at the Treasury, would suggest that that money is going to be found, I suppose, is the one thing we can say with some level of confidence. But you're right, so much of this is, at the moment, just words, and it's also quite striking to see Darren Jones running around saying that his own digital ID scheme was unfunded, which is an interesting admission now that he's out.
Yeah, that's the thing. What credibility do you have? Darren Jones, feel free to come on the show at any time. 10:24 is time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're wishing away. I want to hear your thoughts. What does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about his priorities for governing Britain? What do you make of that VAT cut on your domestic energy bills? It hasn't hit yet. It won't hit until October, and it'll be 86p a week. Are you very grateful? Do you want to send a message to the Prime Minister saying, thank you so much for planning to cut my bill, which will go up by way more than that, by the way, when the Ofgem energy price cap goes up, as it inevitably will. They've said it will. They're on the same date. But do you want to say a big thank you to Andy Burnham? Get in touch. We'll pass your message on. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I'd also particularly like to hear your thoughts on the new Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband, and how you think he's going to get on with Donald Trump. Do let us know. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. So, what does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about his priorities for governing Britain? And if you want to send a message to the new Prime Minister, come on, people, keep it clean. Thanking him. I'm sure you want to thank him for that 86p a week that you're going to get off your energy bills in October. Well, compared to what they're going to go up anyway, because of the Iran war. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But a lot of you getting in touch on text and on tweets. What does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about its priorities for governing Britain? Tom says he will go more to the left. Robert says lots of new faces, but lots of old policies. Mark says he likes giving convicted fraudsters a second chance by welcoming them back into the workplace. I mean, this is true. Here's the thing, okay, Tom. I mean, people shouldn't be condemned for life. I've got a caution from the age of 15 for shoplifting hair gel from Boots. A source of great shame to me, but it's a spent conviction, obviously, at 15.
Yeah.
And people do stupid... It was a dare. I'm apparently rubbish at being a thief.
Obviously.
Among my skills are not being a master of crime. I'm just rubbish at these things. And thank goodness. But that shouldn't be held against someone forever. But the thing is that she lied about the conviction.
She was an adult at the time.
And she was an adult in a responsible role. Yeah. It wasn't like she was 18.
First job, caught doing something.
And it's a rather deliberate thing, apparently done more than a few times to get a new BlackBerry at work.
Yeah, and if we're being honest, I think if Louise Haigh was a towering political figure, we'd feel slightly differently.
But if you're a big mate of Andy Burnham's, you get him elected.
And that seems to be the primary
reason.
Exactly.
Barry says criminals in the cabinet. That says everything. There's no one else. Bobby says he's going to lie even more and punish taxpayers over and over again. Emma says lots of big talk once again. I reckon they're going to find a mysterious black hole and do us all dirty. Yeah, I think that is what's going to happen. Jason is on the line. He's in Wiltshire. Hello, Jason.
Morning, Julia. Did you have a nice holiday?
I did have a nice holiday. Went to Malta. Never been there before. Highly recommend it. Lovely people.
Lovely. Did you go to Gozo as well? And
did go to Gozo. Yeah. Snorkered in the Blue Hole. Did it all.
Good.
Anyway, less of my holiday. Let's talk about Andy Burnham.
Yeah, well, with that 86p, Julia, you can sort of, all that money saved, you can rack your holidays up now, can't you? We're going to be snowed in them.
I mean, what can you... Well, genuinely, people, can you get in touch? What can you buy for 86p these days?
Half a packet of cheap supermarket crisps, I don't know.
Genuinely, can we find out what can you buy for 80? Can everyone get in touch? What can you buy for 86p? 0344 499 1000. Right. Jason, what did you want to say?
Well, he's obviously decided to knock 5% off of electricity. In my opinion, it probably would have been more beneficial to have not cut that by 5% or even cut fuel duty by 5%, because when you start looking how much it costs to fill up the average car these days to go to work, you've got lorries that use diesel, which are obviously transporting goods around.
That affects everybody.
Prices down, it could stabilise prices, which that would bring the cost of living down.
But wouldn't that also... That would cost the Treasury more, wouldn't it? It would cost the Treasury more, and that's why. That's why. Yeah. This is actually a really small cost, but, it's a nice headline at 6 a.m. on his first day in office.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, well, it sounds good, but if you actually sort of start looking into it, there's other things he could have done. I mean, another thing is, I'm on heating oil where I am, so even if he looked up with the other 2 million of us that are on heating oil, we're capped heating oil prices. I mean, why hasn't he cut that on gas as well? That would have, that could have saved the average family £1.50 a month then instead of 86p,
No, fair point. Jason, thank you very much indeed. Paul is in Bolton. Paul, what do you want to say?
Well, I wanted to come on and say, firstly, all this talk about Miata Fambulla being left-wing, well, yes, she might be the most left-wing person in Cabinet, but none of the proper left are in Cabinet, like Rebecca Long-Bailey, Richard Bergen, Clive Lewis, Jeremy Corbyn. I get a bit fed up of people making out the soft left or the proper left or the compromise left, so that's one issue.
Oh, so wait, for you, can I just clarify? So you're saying this Cabinet isn't left-wing enough for you?
Well, why is no one proper left-winging? When you have a Conservative cabinet, you have a Ken Clarke in there, you have a Theresa May, you have someone from what I call the far right, Suella Braverman. Where's Rebecca Long-Bailey? Where's Cat Smith? Where's some of these...
OK, well, I mean, Suella Braverman isn't far right. That's a ridiculous term. But also, I mean, presumably those people aren't in office because they're really not very good.
But also, you're on about second chances.
Yeah.
You've admitted that you've got this spent conviction, but there's a tweet now going around, believe it or not, on Facebook, where you've defended Andrew Tate. Now, Terry Christian, the presenter's sharing it around at the minute.
Well, good for him. I haven't defended Andrew Tate. Yes,
you have in the past as a tweet.
Paul, my love, I think I know what I wrote. I know the exact tweet you're talking about, and it's a tweet I wrote.
Why did you do it? Why did you've been given should you lose your job for defending Andrew Tate?
Paul, I haven't defended Andrew Tate once. Paul,
you've said it.
Paul, my darling, you can keep saying it, but it won't make it true. I wrote a tweet after... No, Paul, for the benefit of our audience, I wrote a tweet about after Greta Thunberg and Andrew Tate got into a bit of a spat, and I said I would rather live his life than her life. And that was it was before there were any charges brought against Andrew Tate at all. I think he was charged, first time any news of anything that was a few days later. And B, I wasn't defending him. I think he's a disgusting, repulsive, horrible human being. That was kind of my point. Rather lost in the nuance on the day of the tweet. But my point was, I would rather live... He's an awful man, but his life, I think, is better than Greta's life, thinking the world's about to end. That was the point. I didn't write it very well. In a better world, in an easier world, would I have written that? No. But in no way was I defending Andrew Tate.
Well, like I said, I'm not holding it to you, but you're constantly holding Louise Haigh. But did you complain when James McMurdo became an MP after he beat up his girlfriend and he actually went to prison? You're a person who loves women and protects women, and you said nothing at the time, did you?
I think most of us at the time when he was appointed weren't aware of that, and that came out later. No, we've just been discussing about second chances, but the key thing about this isn't something that happened way in the past, and then only in 2025 did it emerge that she had lied when she got her job about the conviction. If she had admitted the conviction, that would be a different matter, but she lied to get her job.
Against her, and it's a minor crime. Compared to beating up your girlfriend, it's a minor crime. And you're meant to protect women, and you're meant to protect women. And
no, it's not my job to protect women.
If it's your politics, you turn a blind eye.
No, Paul, genuinely, if you think that the Reform and Tory party think that I don't give them just as hard a time about the stuff that they do, anything they do wrong, you're living in cloud cuckoo land and you're just not paying enough attention.
Back to cabinet as well. So come on, Louise Haigh deserves to be given a chance. You've not seen her in operation yet. Judge her in a year's time. She shouldn't have this on her for life. She's 28. It was a minor conviction.
She was a grown adult. Is a conviction for fraud, and now she's going to be a senior figure in government.
Should she be on benefits all her life? Because you lot don't like people on benefits. But
sorry, is the choice between being a senior cabinet? Are those the only choices in life? Well, senior cabinet minister, benefits.
Criminals, so they'll have to stay on benefits all their life. Maybe people in takeaways don't want criminals to work for them. So that's it, a life on benefits for everyone who's committed a crime. Is that what you want?
I think there's a difference between people making mistakes when they're younger. I think she was a grown adult in a relatively senior job.
Well, 28. Some of you lot say that people shouldn't be able to do this and that till they're 25 because their brains haven't developed.
I don't say that. I'm just saying it shows a terrible, terrible lack of judgment, and an even greater lack of judgment in 2024, just 2 years ago, that she lied about not having a conviction.
Well, like I say, you give people a second chance. You can't hold this against her. You can't hold it against Angela Rayner. And going on about Lucy Powell, well, to be honest, there is a lot of people. I have a look at what right-wing people say. I want to be informed. And there's loads of right-wing people who post about crimes to do with BAME people, even gay people if they can, but they always ignore the ones with the white heterosexual
I mean,
people.
they don't.
Right-wing people are guilty of that. So she's right. And Lucy Powell was trying to say that. She didn't word it very well when she...
Are you talking about when she talked about dog whistle politics,
yeah,
when
but
people
she's
talked
right.
about grooming
No,
gangs?
not you personally, but she's right that a lot of the right just... I mean, all the politics do it. I'm not just going to completely say it's right-wing people, but there's so much tit for tat now. It's almost like victims don't matter. It's just about getting one over that one and getting
I think you're right.
One.
Some people do that. That's not what we do here. I think the issue of the grooming gangs, again, it's not that people are focusing on Pakistan Muslim gangs who are abusing white working class girls. It's the fact that they were not arrested and charged for decades because of their ethnicity and their race. That's the issue.
Was Nigel Farage wrong to defend James McMurdoch being an MP, though? Can you put it on record that you think he was wrong today? And can Tom do that as well?
But I don't speak for the Reform Party. I don't speak for the Reform Party.
For doing it. Do you know what I mean?
I think he lost the whip, didn't he?
No, he lost the whip further down the line. He didn't lose the whip because he found out that it was something. I think
basically I think he was a surprise victor, and no one frankly knew who he was or knew anything about him. And then it emerged, and then he lost the whip, as far as I can recall. But I'll look it up. But Paul, honestly, I'm an equal opportunist critic of people of all governments, of all parties. I'm not party political on that side of things. I just want people who I think are good at the job. Do I think that somebody who committed fraud like that, B, lied about it in the last couple of years, and C, has ever had any of those colours hair over the age of 18, is someone who shows good judgment in life? I would say no. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Paul, I really appreciate your call. I hope you call in again. We're going to take a quick break, 10:30 app. Do apologise, Labour peer Lord Foulkes waiting on the line. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Coming up very soon will be Chris Snowdon from the Institute of Economic Affairs on new Chancellor, VAT cuts and rent controls and the like. First up, though, let's talk to Labour peer, former Minister under Tony Blair's government, Lord Foulkes. Very, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Paul was holding your feet to the fire there, wasn't he?
I thought you'd be enjoying that.
Bolton. Hey,
I thought you'd
liked him.
Hey, look, we started off on a happy note. You know it never ends. It never ends that way, George. Look, first of all, what did you make of Andy Burnham's his first speech outside Number 10? And what does his new cabinet, his choice of senior figures in particular, what does that tell us about his priorities for governing Britain?
I thought his speech was brilliant. He did it without notes, from the heart. He gave us all hope. And I think he was cheered on around the country. And I think his choice of cabinet is particularly good, especially the Chancellor, John Healey. I nearly said Dennis Healey. John Healey. And he's got experience at the Treasury. He's very well respected, and I think he'll make a really, really good Chancellor. And the whole cabinet look very powerful. A lot of experienced people, the round pegs and round holes, and I think we're in for a period of stability.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would like that, even if they're not Burnham or Labour's supporters. I agree with you on the Chancellor role. That was actually, a blinding bit of political nous there. Very well respected
figure. It took the media by surprise, Julia. They were all predicting it was going to be Miliband or
Mahmood.
Someone else. But
Shabana Mahmood, yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I found it very good fun that all the Westminster watchers who had the inside take were pretty sure it was going to be Mahmood by then, and then he threw out the Chancellor. Yeah, it was a great bit of political theatre where Mahmood and Miliband walked up Downing Street together, and Chancellor, as was about to be, appeared first. What does having John Healey as Chancellor tell us, though, in particular the defence budget? Because he resigned from Keir Starmer's cabinet, I mean, just 6 weeks ago, because he said there wasn't enough money for defence, and he blamed the Treasury. Does this mean one of his first jobs in his first budget, which hopefully comes sooner rather than later, will be to beef up defence spending?
Yes, and I think I heard this morning that he's looking at defence bonds. And I think that's a very good idea, because we did that after the war, if you remember. Well, you won't remember. You're too young to remember that. But you'll have read about it in the history books. And we did that. And it's a good way of raising money for something that's vitally important, as defending this country is. And bonds is something that has been suggested by John Eatwell, one of my colleagues in the House of Lords, who's one of the most clever economists.
And it's something that I think Germany is funding their big boost in defence spending the same way. But here's the thing: we have a much higher rate of interest to pay in terms of our borrowing. Bonds are just government borrowing by another name over long periods of time. We will be having to pay huge extra sums to do that.
I think the news this morning said our borrowing had gone down. That's
but it's still
encouraging.
It's still sky high above any other European country, even above Greece.
Yeah, well, but it has to be done in relation to defence, and I think we'll see
no choice there.
That the bonds are important, and defence is important.
If he's going to spend money on defence, even if he's going to borrow a lot of it, and we've still got Pat McFadden in as Work and Pensions Secretary, do you think that sends a message? And he's someone who said, all Labour MPs just want to know, who can we tax and how many more benefits can we give people? Do you think that sends out a message that Andy Burnham may be willing to tackle the ballooning benefits bill?
Oh yes, absolutely. And Pat McFadden's already started that, and he's one of the people who's been committed to it for some time, making sure that people who could work should work.
Well, I'm not aware of anyone coming off benefits. There's
he's giving
there's nothing in the stats to suggest that.
Employers are going to get £3,000 to take on young people who have been on benefit for some time.
Even though they're paying £3,000 plus more in national insurance for the employer to take someone on.
But you've got to move forward, and he's moving forward bit by bit to get people to get off benefits into work.
Well, and Andy Burnham has said he wants to. A lot of what he said is he wants to do things differently. It's all about doing things differently. But at the end of the day, some things just need to be done, like getting people off benefits. Is there any evidence with the same backbenchers he's got right now, he'll be able to do anything differently to get, let's face it, millions of people off benefits and back into work?
Well, that's what he's doing, and he's already started on it. And I think we'll see that. There are far too many young people not in employment, education or training, and he's made it absolutely clear that it's been his priority, and it'll continue to be his priority to get these people off benefits and into work.
Well, you say it's a priority.
It does take some time, but it does take some time. But that's what he's doing. That's why he's encouraging.
Hundreds of people every single day are still being signed on for disability benefits, the vast majority of which are young people and often largely claiming mental health issues, many of which are entirely subjective. That doesn't suggest to me that there's any effort to stem that tide.
Well, there is. He's made it absolutely clear that he's doing that. And more people are moving into employment.
All right. Well, no, actually, the employee payroll has gone down.
Well, I think you'll see.
I don't make the stats up. I just look at what the ONS says.
I think you'll see that things are going to be moving substantially in the right direction.
Well, I hope they will. What about rough sleeping? He said, it was interesting, his first instruction as Prime Minister was going to be to basically to end rough sleeping. I don't know how you can instruct the end of rough sleeping. Obviously, we saw rough sleeping going down during the pandemic years because people were provided with homes, but that's all gone to pot now. He said he was doing that in Manchester. It was a major priority in Manchester. Exact opposite has happened. Rough sleeping has gone up in Manchester, not down. What is he going to do to achieve that?
I think one of the problems was because Manchester was looking after rough sleepers, that people came from Glasgow and Newcastle and Liverpool into Manchester. Once it's being done on a national level, on a United Kingdom level, then it's something that will be effective.
And is that a top priority? Is that, given how stretched most people are, is that the top priority for a government?
Well, it's one of the top priorities. The other one we saw this morning is the value-added tax on electricity bills is going to be taken off with effect from the 1st of October. There are a number of... It's only the first day, Julia.
It is, no. He did it within hours. But this thing, it's 5% of that on domestic electricity bills, and it's going to be cut to 0% in October. I would absolutely welcome that. It's going to save the typical home, their bill is going to go down by £45 a year. That's 86 pence a week. Can I ask you, what do you plan to spend your extra 86 pence on?
It's better than not doing it, isn't it? You know, you're saying this, but he moves
Well, he wasn't. No, he said he was going to give people breathing space.
The people who really need it are also going to get extra. There's the warm homes supplement for people who are on benefit. And there are a lot of people who are going to get more than the
well, they're also everybody's bills are going to go up by more than £45 over the year.
Well, how do you know
in
that?
October. We know that
How do you know that?
Because the Ofgem have said that the energy price cap will go up again in October.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean to say they will go up.
I mean, they will. They will go up because the Iran war has continued, and the impact on the limited oil and gas supplies coming out of the Strait of Hormuz will mean that there will be price hike. That is baked in. Everybody knows that's baked in. I'm not plucking that from my imagination. At which point that 86p a week is going to be completely and utterly snuffed out by the extra increase by far more than that.
No, you're completely daft. Because what you're saying is that would happen anyway, and to try and alleviate that to some extent, value-added tax is being taken off. If he hadn't taken value-added tax off, it would have gone up even more.
Yes, but he says he wants to give people a bit of breathing space. I'm asking, how much breathing space is 86 pence a week for the average family?
Well, you wait to the budget, and then you'll see a lot more happening. But it's better than nothing. It's better than a kick in the teeth, and it's better than a move in the other direction.
We'll take that.
Julia.
It's better that it's not going up by 86p a week.
I heard even the Reform spokesman on the radio this morning welcoming it. So surely you can welcome it, Julia.
I've already tweeted.
I know you're not a Reform spokesperson.
I've already tweeted that I do welcome it, but I'm just saying it's not actually breathing space. Look, we'll have to leave it there. It's 10:50. Lord Fawkes, so look, you're very positive now. I hope that hopey changing thing works for all of us. Labour peer Lord Fawkes, thanks for joining us. 10:50 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Up next, Chris Snowdon from the Institute of Economic Affairs. What does he make of it? More. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:52 is the time. Tom Slater is with me, rapidly looking up at what we can buy for 86 pence. 2 pints of milk in Sainsbury's.
Yep.
There you go. There you go. That's an extra 2 pints of milk a week you can get. There you are. I mean, come on, people, we're winning now. That life is going to be better now.
At current rates, I think it's about 2.5 Freddos.
Yeah, I think the Freddo pence exchange rate is the key thing. There we are. Chris Snowden, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, joins us now. Chris, I bet you're very excited about the extra 86p you're going to have in your pocket a week come October for this VAT cut. What are you going to be spending yours on?
Well, I'm not sure I'm actually going to get it. It all depends on what the energy price cap is, of course. The government decides the cost of energy these days, and it's been going up in the long term due to our failure to invest in energy policy.
I think you'll find that George Fuchs, my last guest, will say you're just daft. That was the word he used for thinking that. How on earth would you know that? Because we already know that's what's going to happen. But there we are. OK, but let's talk about, first of all, that VAT cut. That's to be welcomed, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think people who supported Brexit in particular have been saying that this is a Brexit benefit that the government could take advantage of. We didn't used to have VAT on fuel until 1994. Norman Lamont made himself very unpopular by putting it on. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing. Obviously, it's fairly slim pickings, but, I mean, the government hasn't got any money, really, to spend. It hasn't even got the money for this particular measure, which is going to cost, I think, around £850 million. So don't be expecting little giveaways like this every day.
No.
I think this is a one-off.
And it is a little giveaway. And in case it's already, out of the bag very quickly when this was announced after 6 a.m, it was very clear that, hold on, this is funded for this year, but it's not fully funded because this is about getting rid of the digital ID cards, and the budget for that over 3 years, that would pay for it for this year as part of contribution towards it. But then, of course, we had the sacked Minister Darren Jones, who used to work in the Treasury, saying, oh, well, actually, that policy wasn't funded anyway, so actually you haven't got that money.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how they're actually going to pay for digital ID. But, 3 cheers for digital ID going while we're at it. I mean, it's not a bad start. I'm not going to start kicking Mr. Burnham. I'm sure he's going to come up with many more unpopular decisions than this.
No, exactly. I mean, I'm all in favour of some of those things. In terms of, what we've heard from what he wants to do, who he's appointed as Chancellor in John Healey, and some of his advisors, he's got an awful lot of people around him who come from very sort of left-wing think tanks, very kind of the opposite thinking from the right-wing Institute of Economic Affairs, well, free market think tank as you are. Rent controls have been talked about, borrowing an awful lot more, mansion tax, so £1.5 million homes largely in London and the South East can be actually a very ordinary 2 or 3 bedroom home in main parts of London that would cost that much. It's mad, I know, but that is the case. What do you make of those policies being even talked about?
I think any serious leader, no matter what party they're from, should have certain things that are simply ruled out. Rent controls is an obvious example. Rent controls have been a disaster everywhere they've been tried. Wealth taxes are very ineffective, don't raise very much money, have all sorts of distortionary impacts. Even talking about them gets the rich thinking about moving. We haven't got any more money to spend. Even this little announcement today has put bond yields up. I think Andy Burnham should be ruling a lot of things out, as well as actually telling us what he's going to do now. I mean, he hasn't had a proper leadership contest. He hasn't had a hustings, so he hasn't had to say what he's going to do. But I thought he might actually know, and once he became Prime Minister, might tell us. But he still seems to be sort of flying kites for all sorts of different policies. And you're quite right, Julia, that he's surrounding himself with some people that concern me. We've got the new Minister for Energy, his previous Chief Executive of the New Economics Foundation, which is a hardline net zero anti-growth think tank, and you got several people from Hope Not Hate, rather misleadingly named campaign group in the heart of Downing Street. So all that's a concern, and Burnham's failure to rule out really bad policies is also a concern.
But again, a lot of these policies are very popular. And again, we've got that Mayor of New York, Madani, you know, rent controls, controlled, state-provided shops to provide cheap goods, free buses for teenagers. A lot of people would like that. Although I have to say, if you've been on a bus in recent years with when teenagers are getting on, all the adults will be wanting to get off for their own safety. But, you know, capping bus fares. There are things that will be very popular. I would even use the word populist from him. But again, there is no money, and unless and especially if we've got John Healey as Chancellor, and he's going to be exposed as an absolute fraud if he doesn't massively increase the defence budget in real terms, unless there is a way of getting hold of, you know as well, and I know the big elephant in the room is the ballooning welfare bill, then things are not going to get any better for anyone, because our interest rate and our borrowing is going to keep going up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you can't just be doing things that seem popular. You know, the people who complete surveys, who are unusual people in themselves, spend an average of 6 seconds thinking about each question. They don't really know what they're talking about most of the time. They don't think about the second-order effects. Keir Starmer did lots of things that were popular, and every time he found something that was unpopular, he'd do a U-turn on it. But in the end, he himself was incredibly unpopular. What people actually want are leaders, and they accept that sometimes they're not going to agree with those decisions, but they also accept that they don't know all that much about them, and the fact that they have to give an answer to some pollster is really by the by. It is just a fact, generally speaking, that if a policy has not been introduced and it's been popular for years and years and years, it's probably a bad policy.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't, then politicians would bring it in. Why wouldn't they? It's just that sometimes politicians actually know a bit more about the public and they've thought about some of the unintended consequences. So avoid very, very popular policies, I would say, is a good rule of thumb.
That's a very, very good point. Yeah, why wouldn't you do it? And again, things like rent controls, the wealth taxes, all of those things, wherever they have been tried, they've always had to be abandoned, because they not only don't work in terms of what they're intended to do, they tend to have the exact opposite effect, damaging the very people who you most perhaps said you wanted to help. Chris Snowdon at the Institute of Economic Affairs, thank you very much indeed. 10:59 is the time. More from Tom Slater coming up. More from you and your calls. I want to know, what are you going to be spending your 86 pence on that you're going to get back on your VAT, on your energy bills in October? Give us a call. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you for joining us, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Great to have your company. If you miss anything from the show, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing Britain's brand new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and his brand new cabinet. In that surprise move yesterday, John Healey was appointed as Chancellor. Many hoping that will signal at least we're going to get that proper, real increase in defence spending. Also, one of his first acts as Prime Minister, first major announcement, Andy Burnham, around 6 o'clock this morning, announced he's going to remove VAT, currently at 5% on domestic energy bills, down to flat 0%. That will be a saving of about £45 a year off the average bill for an average household, which is a whopping 86 pence a week. Come on, people, get the champers out. Apparently that's going to give us some breathing space. Yeah, look, it's better than going up. But given that your energy bills are going to go up in October anyway, when the next energy price cap comes in, thanks to the Iran war and our mad net zero policies, not entirely sure that is going to be enough of a breathing space for an awful lot of people. Also, Donald Trump has wished Andy Burnham good luck and Godspeed in a phone call with the new PM, who, of course, extended an invitation for him to come to Manchester for the next G7 summit, which we are hosting and will be in the UK anyway. And, of course, he would attend, and it will be in Manchester. Of course it will. Interestingly, though, a senior Trump administration official has told The Telegraph this morning that the appointment of Ed Miliband as our new Foreign Secretary, look, thank God for small mercies, at least he's not the Chancellor, people, has caused deep concern in the White House, and that his views on green energy projects will be a point of friction. Well, tell us something we don't know. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular about Andy Burnham. What does his first cabinet choice tell us about his priorities for governing Britain? What, crucially, you're going to spend your 86 pence a week on? You can get 2 pints of milk in Sainsbury's. You could buy, I think, 2.5 Freddos. I think Tom Slater,
broccoli in Tesco.
Editor of Spiked Online 10, Tom Slater is my grocery correspondent today, and we can get a head of broccoli for 86p in.
Well, yeah, well, 82, so you'll have 4 to spare.
Ooh.
Save that.
Save that. You put that 4 pence away. Put that as your deposit for a house. There you go. And then you could become an illegal immigrant, and then you could get one for free.
All the broccoli you can eat.
Them's the rules. Rules. No one is going to be spending their 86p on broccoli. Anyway, I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV, as a lot of you already are. Calls are charged to the national rate. Text cost altogether now one standard network rate message. Tom never joins in with that. Tom Slater, great to have your company. Great to have your little costume. It's sort of like having someone like Money Supermarket sitting here going, look, you could. Is it 2.5 Freddos?
2.5 Freddos, yeah, just.
That is. I don't remember ever having them as a child.
They used to be about 10p or thereabouts. I remember that.
I'm of the era. I remember the penny chews. Oh, do you know what? He looked at me so blankly there. If you're watching on YouTube, you'd have seen that. He gave me the look of like, why is she talking about the First World War? Back me up, people. In the 70s...
You'd emerged from your chimney sweeping job with the pennies you'd been given to get
after
your
fighting in the Boer War, in the 19... Mark, he's always saying, can you back me up? In the 70s, you could buy little blackjacks and little fruit salads, for a penny each. Everyone's... OK, Mark can remember half a p. I don't know where you lived.
It's getting a bit for Yorkshire, didn't it?
Yes.
I remember when 99s were actually 99p.
That was the thing.
That's a
Do you know
marker
what?
of a generation.
Took the little 5-year-old nephews out the other day. We, of course, passed an ice cream van. What could you do? You have to buy the ice cream. We're very bad, aunt and uncle. And, but we're fun. We got ice cream. 99. It was like £3.50.
Yeah.
Like,
at least drop the
name.
name.
Like, I said, I don't want to buy the whole van.
Yeah.
I just want to buy
energy
the 99
costs.
flake.
It all comes down to energy costs, keeping that thing running.
Now, this will be true. I think we've digressed.
Do you reckon?
I think it's all gone. It's all gone on. Right, I do want to know what you're going to spend your 86p on. Tom Slater, we're asking about what does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about its priorities for governing Britain. Let me just run through, the sackings. Rachel Reeves, yes. David Lammy, yes. Lord Hermer of Chagos FM, and prosecuting any man or woman who put a uniform on ever for this country, yes. Darren Jones, yes. Also, it sounds like it's going to be fun because he's already coming out criticising the government.
He's not happy.
John Healey as Chancellor, Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary, Shabana Mahmood staying at the Home Secretary's job, Pat McFadden staying at Work and Pensions, Lisa Nandy staying at Culture, new First Secretary of State, sort of Deputy Prime Minister in all but name, Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, convicted fraud. I'm sorry, but she is. Wes Streeting as Defence Secretary, a surprise appointment for a lot of people. Yvette Cooper demoted from Foreign Secretary to Health Secretary. These people have no self-respect. If you're demoted like that, you don't take the job. Lucy Powell, who's Deputy Party Leader, she's the Education Secretary, taking basically the big part of Bridget Phillipson's job. She's been demoted to just keeping the equalities brief, which is bad news for women.
Doing it so well.
Angela Rayner's back in her old job, despite not paying her stamp duty on time, as the Housing Secretary. And Jonathan Reynolds is Business and Trade Secretary. Miata Van Bula, former big ally of Ed Miliband, net zero nut. Is Energy Secretary, various other roles as well, but those are the biggies. What does all of that tell us?
Well, it could have been worse, I suppose.
Happy Tuesday, everybody.
We were openly talking about Ed Miliband being Chancellor, which in and of itself would have been a problem, certainly where the markets are concerned. So that's good. And it seems like in other areas, you were talking about Shabana Mahmood and how her immigration reforms really barely touch the size of the issue. I agree. But again, could have been so much worse. She's about as good as it gets, I'm afraid to say, on the migration issue within the Labour Party.
Yeah.
So there's some semi-wins there. And it is nice to see the Hermer, Reeves, Lammy, hapless trio be dispensed with. They were particularly bad, but you look across the piece and you just see either people who've been kept in post despite making it an absolute horlicks of it, whether that's Bridget Phillipson and inequalities or what have you, or it's other people who've been brought through, either to kind of keep the balance of the factions, making sure Wes Streeting is happy enough in his post and what have you, or it's to bring through the more northern supporters of Andy Burnham, who clearly were hoping for a payoff for the support they've given them, understandably so. So it's just, but they're not necessarily ones who are going to shift the dial in any.
The Starmer loyalists, but also the people most associated with his, let's go with it, regime. Rachel Reeves, Lord Hermer, out. Dave, by all accounts, Rachel Reeves was offered defence, but I mean, they would have known she couldn't take it, because you can't do that job unless you've got actually the defence budget. She'd have to admit that she basically lied about that, hadn't she? David Lammy, I mean, why would anyone have David Lammy in their government if they weren't, I don't know, contractually obliged to, for goodness sake?
Bit of light relief, Minister for Light Relief or something.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, you're trying to scrap jury trials for an awful lot of people. I mean, you know, the man's just appalling. But I mean, John Healey, he's totally granted a safeguard pair of hands. And it's interesting, actually, Cabinet Ministers currently arriving for Privy Council. This is the meeting of not just current Cabinet Ministers, but other senior ministers, ex-ministers who advise the monarch, and they're arriving for that right now. And we're going to be seeing Cabinet a little bit later, a later Cabinet than we would normally have. But on the first day, I mean, lots of people didn't get their brief for a while, did they? But I think 12:30, I think the first Cabinet's going to be. It did seem to be a pretty brutal purge for someone. I mean, I'm quite happy about it, but for someone who said, like, he wants to end factionalism. Now, certainly his Chancellor post does. That's very unfactional. That's very clever. It's a really clever move, and it gives me a lot of hope. But although he is a lefty, everyone forget he worked for Gordon Brown. You know, he's a lefty. But does this actually show that there's a level of kind of ruthlessness here, and a lot of 11 cabinet ministers sacked. A lot of the non-Manchester fanboys and girls not get out, and a lot of those who've basically licked the bottom of the new Prime Minister, they are in.
Yes, at the same time, I suppose it could have been a fair bit more brutal. It could have been even higher turnover than we've seen currently. And I think he's been gifted by the fact that, we talk about Starmer loyalists. There were precious few, really, towards the end.
I mean, no one really cared about Starmer.
Yeah, I mean, no one really knew what Starmerism was, including Starmer himself, so it's quite hard to be loyal to something that doesn't really exist. But so I think he was given an easier hand there. He had to shuffle things around. He had to stamp his authority to a certain extent, but he also had to try and keep these different potentially warring tribes happy. So from that perspective, I guess it's a decent enough job. But in terms of setting a better direction for the country, or even just more competent people in post, I don't think, with some exceptions, we could really emerge from this saying
I would like to see some competent people. I mean, Angela Rayner, back in her job, after that stamp duty resignation, we had a caller, Paul, very angry with me for talking about the first Secretary of State, Louise H, basically masterminded his campaign in Makerfield. I mean, it's a safe Labour seat. I mean, again, OK, you voted Leave and everything, but I mean, I don't think you needed to be a mastermind to do that. We're going to be told she's this brilliant, brilliant thinker. But she was Transport Secretary, she had to resign because she did something so dumb. She got a conviction for basically stealing a phone from work and pretending it had been stolen. By all accounts, from the workplace where she did it, 3 or 4 sources said she'd done this a number of times. And then she lied about it. That doesn't strike... And also, she had bright pink hair for her first term in office. I don't think that shows a woman of great judgment and intelligence. No, I'm old-fashioned. Sorry, I am. I'm not sure. I think this is going to be like the Morgan McSweeney thing. We're like, oh, he's utterly brilliant. He masterminded this great Labour victory. You know who masterminded the 24 election victory? I mean, the last few Tory Prime Ministers who masterminded that by being absolutely dire. I mean, that's who masterminded that, not the Labour Party. There's all these people who just... It's like Mandelson was always given far too much credit for things like the 97 election victory. I mean, these things don't happen because one person is this brilliant mastermind.
No, there's a lot of blowing smoke in certain directions, which goes on at times like this. But I do think that at this point, what we're seeing is a kind of real lack of substance and talent on the political side, just in terms of people who are being appointed to cabinet and various ministries and what have you. But also in kind of any sense that behind the scenes there is anyone with the grit, grip and intelligence to kind of push whatever
anything
this
done.
Burnham agenda is through. I mean,
Well,
the
we need
kinds
to
of
find out
appointments
what it
we've seen.
is. Rough sleeping, apparently a major priority. I don't want to see people rough sleeping.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's a tragedy. It's nearly always. There's been child abuse, there's been domestic abuse, ex-veterans, alcohol problems, family breakdown, mental health problems, drug problems. I mean, there's a litany of abject misery for people who end up living on the streets, and we absolutely need to tackle that. Do I think that most British people went, oh, this is my #1 priority from a new Prime Minister? No, I'm sorry, I don't think they do.
And it's sort of a reminder that there is a preference for sort of virtue signalling over substance here. You take something like rough sleeping. It's in large part an issue of addiction a lot of the time, accompanied these days also with a lot of illegal migration, where you're seeing that feeding numbers to a certain
The
extent.
rough sleepers around my way are nearly, well, people are pretending to be rough sleepers.
Well, quite.
Often not, though. Having
There is
done an
that.
early shift for many years, I was able to see whether people were actually where they were supposed to be. Apparently rough sleeping, no, they're not.
There is that, but it's not just something which is a question of pure political will. I mean, one of the clearer things that can be tackled on the level of housing and accommodation are people who are, you've got a mother and young kids in a B&B, or against the amount of sofa surfing that happens with young people who have nowhere to go. That's something that to a certain extent is a question of just resources and
The
where you
number
place
of
them.
available
But
cheap homes. Here's the thing, if you didn't import, tens and tens of thousands of illegal migrants on boats, and you didn't put them into, bedsits and small flats, and indeed, obviously, as we've seen recently, newly built family homes, maybe we'd have space for the British people who haven't got homes.
And
Maybe we'd have enough housing they could actually afford their own rent.
And people correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2020, when the kind of edict went out to get all the rough sleepers off the streets in the midst of the pandemic, hotel accommodation was what was lent on there. So obviously they never tire of telling us they're closing down the migrant hotels. Is that going to be the plan? Are they going to be repurposed from migrant hotels to hotels for people who were previously homeless? So again, it's one of those things where I think he just wanted to have something that would light up the eyes of anyone who, genuinely everyone would prefer a world in which rough sleeping just did not exist.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you can instruct it to end,
exactly,
as
it
he
will
said
not happen
yesterday.
just because you say so. That's the problem. It's
exactly.
a much
Well, and
knottier
again, and he
social
did it
problem,
in
if you'd like to
Manchester.
believe.
He said the same pledge in Manchester, and rough sleeping went up in Manchester. Now, it's been pointed out in one of our guests today, well, basically they were treating people well, people were getting help, and so people came, word went round. Presumably there's a rough sleeping community. Everything's a community now. Word went round. They're obviously all on their mobile phones and hearing the word, really? And people came from other cities to basically get Manchester to help sort them out. Maybe that is the case. Who knows? That wouldn't happen if it was a national policy. I doubt very much that long term you can solve any of that, because actually a lack of homes isn't the actual issue for rough sleepers, as you say. It's many other things. This ability to heat your home, light your home, electricity, domestic electricity bills. At 6 o'clock this morning, and first major policy announcement, VAT, which is currently at 5% on our domestic energy bills, or electricity, sorry, is going down to 0%. It's going to save the average home £45 a year from October, apart from the fact that in October, we're also going to see the next Ofgem energy price cap, which is going to go up because, of course, because we've had the Iran war and we've got mad net zero policies. We're told that is going to give us a bit of breathing space to help people who are struggling at the moment. It works out at 86 pence a week. That's 2.5 pints of milk in Sainsbury's, 2.5 Freddos. On your working week, though, that's half a Freddo a day extra you can have.
That's not bad, actually.
Let's not sneer. It buys you 450 millilitres of Tesco light mayonnaise, which I find, frankly, is exactly the same as the regular stuff. And also, you can buy some Tesco cooked ham for that. So look at this, but do not look at Tesco
and to be clear,
sliced
you
cooked
could buy
ham
one of these items individually. This isn't like a full-on
and you
shop.
can buy them once a week.
Yeah.
For extra with your 86 pence saving.
To call this breathing space is a slap in
Breathing
the face, really,
space
isn't it?
would be, 500 quid off your energy bills.
And even then, that's something which a lot of people, would be very, very welcome. But especially when you think what could be done with energy, remove the green levies, properly get to, new oil and gas licences, not just speeding up the projects that we've already got.
And that will take a while. We're constantly told that will not make a difference to our prices, our energy prices. Well, no, not in the first year or two. It's going to take a while.
Doesn't mean it's a.
But we wouldn't have to have. But we'd be getting the VAT in.
Yeah.
We'd be getting the fuel duty, all the taxes from the companies doing it, instead of paying that when we buy it from Norway or from or getting through the Hormuz Strait.
And especially got Andy Burnham running around with remarkable arrogance talking about a 10-year plan for government. And let's talk about 10-year plans. Let's talk about actually having proper, cheap and reliable and secure energy again. This thinking that is pervaded in energy policy, which is on the one hand demented because they think that you can sustain a modern economy purely on the basis of unreliable sources of energy. But also, it's oddly short-termist. Whenever someone says, well, what about this? This would actually solve the issue. They're like, well, building that nuclear power station will take too long.
Remember that classic video of Nick Clegg in, 2010? When he was Deputy Prime Minister, saying, well, I mean, that won't come online until, 2022. Well, that would have been useful in 2022.
Exactly. We've had 4 years of it by now. So, there you go. But I think it's just because of the fact that they are... It's the thing about the modern Labour Party, is that they claim to have the cost of living as their primary concern. And yet... you then have the net zero agenda. Which is the exact opposite of bringing down... It's tantamount to heresy to even question it. And the fact that the new Energy Secretary, Fiata Mambula, who we've referenced... Miata Fambula, sorry. Who we've referenced, formerly of the New Economics Foundation... Full-on lefty, net zero fanatic. Absolutely. You can either have prosperity or you can have net zero. You can't have both. You can either have relief and breathing space for ordinary people as they're facing sky-high energy bills, or you can have net zero, you can't have both. Also, you can't reindustrialise with energy prices 4 times higher than most of the Western world. Yeah. There's some basic things, and this is the lack of joined-up thinking that we have throughout government. And I mean, frankly, the last Tory government were just as bad on a lot of this stuff. Oh yeah. Net zero is Theresa May's baby. There are so many reasons why she was our worst another politician, by the way, who came in. Was oddly popular to a certain extent. Everyone projected onto it all their hopes and dreams, and it crashed and burned very quickly. That might well happen here, I dare say. Well, this is it. I mean, again, I think the British public have got wise, though. And again, she was very wooden. She had the Starmer thing, sort of inability to communicate. Yeah. Burnham is a good communicator. It's great. That's great. We were playing earlier the little clip of a few of the things he had to say, and it's all lovely, hopey, changey, brilliant, and he's a nice bloke. I've got no issue. He's not someone you can hate like Keir Starmer, who absolutely despises the British people. I don't think Andy Burnham does. I think he's a good bloke. I just don't think he has a plan. I think he's a clever guy. I think his heart's in the right place, but I think his politics is far to the left of where A, the British public are, and B, where sanity is, and where and it's just simply not going to work what he plans to do. Yeah, and also being a nice person is, first of all, it's not a requirement or necessarily even a benefit of running the country. First of all, because if you're a nice person but you don't really know what you want to do, then that gets you nowhere. Yep. Also, in terms of a lot of the reporting about Andy Burnham, people will say a bit too much of a people pleaser. Why doesn't he please me? I'm people. Inability to, properly kind of impose his authority. You don't. At the end of the day, the person who's making the decisions that affect your life, that affect the security of the country, that affect all manner of things in so many ways. The fact that might be more human than the previous occupant of that office doesn't cut much mustard. And I think... Can I afford to pay my rent or my mortgage? Can I afford my energy bill? Can I afford new school uniform for the kids? Can I have a week's holiday, in Spain, if I work all year? Am I paying more and more taxes or not? I mean, if I get a pay rise, is most of it going to be eaten up by tax? This is what... is my job secure? This is really basic stuff that people want. That's how you give people breathing space. Yeah, exactly. And yet, all we're getting at the moment is a lot of airy rhetoric, hopey-changey type stuff. And now finally some policies, but this is meagre, really. And I think until he gets his own mandate and some sort of genuine sort of set of policies together, this is what we're going to be treated to, because there's only so much he can do legitimately or without much pushback when he hasn't got a mandate of his own. Look, listen, Joshua Kerry, let's talk about something completely different. Joshua Kerry is a 28-year-old man who has now been charged with the murder of Anne Widdecombe. He's going to be appearing in court later today. Inquest has already been opened, and he's open for 1 day, and then they're usually adjourned. But this obviously the 78-year-old former MP and former MEP for the Tories and for the Brexit Party, found dead in her home in Devon. This is way back on Friday the 9th of July.
Exeter Coroner's Court heard that she had visible injuries, although the cause of her death is yet to be established. But the senior coroner, Philip Spinney, said that a post-mortem examination had taken place, and at this stage, he said, the precise medical cause of death has yet to be established, but it's believed that she was bludgeoned to death, and he would suspend the inquest until the conclusion of any criminal proceedings. So, as I say, Joshua Carey is from Rotherham in South Yorkshire, some 300 miles away. He's arrived at Westminster Magistrate Court. He's going to appear later, charged with her murder. He was first arrested on suspicion of murder 2 days after she was found dead. He was later re-arrested on suspicion of commission, preparation or instigation of acts of terrorism, but he's only so far been charged with murder. And it's interesting, the head of UK counter-terrorism policing at New Scotland Yard, Lawrence Taylor, said yesterday, "I want to make it very clear that our investigation into Kerry determining his motivations and any wider activity he may have been involved in is continuing." He said yesterday, "As with all murder investigations, understanding the why is a key part of the inquiries." He said it was a particularly intensive and complex investigation, but no one else is being sought in relation to it. Obviously, we can't speculate too much. It's a live case, but, you know, arrest made, charges being brought. He's going to appear in court. We're starting that process. But nevertheless, still an unbelievably shocking death, and shocking, once again, for the left immediately criticising the right, saying, oh, how outrageous to speculate, when the left, including the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, quite happily speculated on arrests which have not resulted in any charges on terrorism, which was what people were supposedly arrested on, in relation to an Islamic event in Suffolk, where some 13 arrests in total were made, and most of the people have already been released without charge at all. Speculation, blatant in open tweets written by the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister. We talked about this yesterday. Just absolutely two-tier rules when it comes to this.
No, completely. You're allowed to speculate so long as you speculate in the right direction. There's not only the example
about the right things
that you cite there, but also, I mean, in the wake of the horrific news that not only had Anne Widdecombe died, but it seemed like had been murdered, you had people on the airwaves openly speculating about, oh, it's probably a robbery or a burglary gone wrong or what have you. But as soon as anyone just posed the question, particularly as we started to learn more. Could there be a political motive? Do people drive almost 300 miles to burgle a bungalow on Dartmoor? These are totally fair questions to ask, and to be perfectly frank, I don't think this qualifies as something that could genuinely prejudice a trial or any investigation.
Nonsense.
It's nonsense. And also the double standards. I mean, the way in which reform were being hauled over the coals for supposedly exploiting and politicising this. People were even raising the fact that they held this sort of flower-laying ceremony.
For a former a colleague
exactly.
who died in horrible circumstances.
Someone who they'd been in contact with, you know, within hours of the worst possible thing happening to her. That was treated as politicised, and yet you didn't have to, you know, you spent 30 seconds on Google and you would find images of people laying flowers after the horrific murder of Jo Cox back in 2016 by a far-right extremist.
It's terrible. She was a mother of young children. It was an awful, horrific death by, you know, far-right, full-on Nazi. And again, it wasn't the fault of Brexit or the Brexit campaign, but she was an utterly inconsequential, insignificant political figure at the time of her death. She was, I'm sure, a lovely woman, and would have maybe had a great future ahead. She was a backbench MP who, let's face it, most of us had never heard of at the time when she was horrifically murdered. Anne Widdecombe had been a government minister. She'd been she'd been in 3 different parties effectively. She'd been a well-known figure. She'd been a key figure. She'd been on Strictly Come Dancing and Big Brother. She was an absolute household name, and she was a significant influence on politics.
Exactly, and people are well within their rights, certainly her colleagues, to mourn her death and to mark it publicly. There was a lot of this discussion about, oh, this isn't what the family want. 2 members of her family were present
exactly
at that. So can we just clear this rubbish away? And especially if we're going to get to grips with the broader issue of MPs, the threat that is posed, and what might be done about that, then if anyone's trying to politicise this or turn this into a, like I said, partisan tit for tat, I don't necessarily think it's reform.
No, indeed. 11:28 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that if you want to have your say, but I also want to hear from you about Andy Burnham. What does his first cabinet picks tell you about his priorities for governing Britain? And what are you going to spend your 86p a week saving on, with the VAT on your energy bills, or your electricity bills in particular, going down from 5% to 0% from October? Get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 11:31 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls about Andy Burnham and what you're going to spend your 86 pence a week saving on your VAT on fuel. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Andrew's in Hertfordshire and he's done just that. Good morning to you, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Fantastic to have you back from your holiday. I'm glad you had a great
So
time.
you're away for 4 days. Why is everyone... I haven't gone to the moon.
Yeah. So the 86p,
Yeah.
I said this to your chap on the phones. You could have had a fruit salad, or you could have bought, when I was small, blackjacks.
Yeah.
I don't think they're available. I don't think they're available
Do they
anymore.
not exist anymore? Can someone find
no.
out?
No.
Oh,
trust
God, I've
me.
got
What-
Tom
the way-
Slater, my consumer correspondent's doing it right now. You remember that. Anyway, what did you make of Andy Burnham and his picks? What do you reckon on what this tells us about him?
Well, the first thing is that is a sense of humour is there. So you got Hesketh in America, our #1 military partner, who has purged the whole of the US military of anything remotely gay, has got to go into a room with a gay man representing the UK.
Hold on a minute.
for
No,
defence.
I think what Hexeth's done, he purged a lot of sort of, frankly, the trans madness and the wokeness. I mean, a lot of people seem to have an issue with Wes Streeting being defence secretary. A, most defence secretaries have no background in defence. And B, what's the issue with him being gay? Why have people got such an issue with it?
I haven't got an issue. What I'm saying is when he meets Hesketh, let's see how it pans out, all right? I've got no issue with that at all. So park that.
OK.
You know, being gay has been around since the beginning of time. And they're not gay, they're normal. It's a normal thing to be.
Well, exactly.
Right? You
So
know,
I just think it's irrelevant. But anyway, OK, all right then. What else do you want to say?
So if you look at Burnham, new politics, new way. So the first thing he does is he tells the country a lie. Because he says he's going to give you back the money because he stopped digital ID.
Yeah.
But he hasn't. And then straight away you see the Labour Party is now split. And all they'll do is they'll brief against him. And he's not going to last till Christmas. It's begun. Today, it began at 6 o'clock, and it's going to carry on with real momentum now.
Yeah, I mean, Darren Jones already coming out, but I mean, basically admitting the government lied about the cost of digital ID, whether it was funded. Andrew, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Roy is in Hampshire. Hello, Roy. What do you want to say? Morning.
Blackjacks, hello. Blackjacks and fruit salad, they were 4 for a penny, lovey.
Was that 4 for a penny? So they were a quarter of a pence.
Yeah.
Mark in our control, Mark reckons they were half pence. I only remember them they were called penny chews when I was a kid because they were a penny.
They were bigger ones.
Oh.
But they were
They
bigger
the
ones.
fancy
But
ones?
the old fruit salad and blackjacks, they were a farthing each, 4 for a penny.
Well, there you are then. There you are. I'm
Do
going
you remember Spangles as well? They were threepence.
This has become a real sort of going down memory lane, isn't it? Anyway, what did you make of? Well, is that what if you could? Is that what you'd spend your 86p a week saving on?
Well, it's ridiculous, lovey. God help this country with these people that are in power, mate. They're out and out communists. Just God help us.
They are. This is the thing. I don't think a lot of people realise when they talk about this soft left, they are very much to the left of the average person in this country.
Yeah, Julia, I'm an old age pensioner, mate,
Yeah.
and I haven't got a lot of money. I treat myself. I'd get a gammon once a week. It was
Yep.
a fiver.
Yep.
Now that's £9.
Yep.
What was a fiver is now in a few months it's gone up from £5 to £9.
Yeah.
So where's his 87p a week going?
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate your call. Let's go to a quick break. Up next, we'll be talking to former Conservative government minister Steve Baker. What does he make of it all? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. A lot of you are getting in touch about what you can buy with your 86p. You can get a second-class stamp and have 5p change. So you can send something to someone you know that will never receive it, probably maybe in a couple of weeks if you're lucky, and you get
You
to
can
have
send them the 5p.
You get 5p left over. That's what Mark says. Alan says a couple of bananas. You could buy an apple. Apples, doesn't it depend? It's like if you're in the supermarket, you're buying a bunch of apples, it doesn't cost that much. An own brand tin of baked beans or a couple of cans of budget chopped tomatoes. Ted says a little pastry. And John says squashes, which my producer, who's in his 20s, just been explaining to me what they were. I'd like to point out you can still buy fruit salad and blackjacks. And if one more young person on the team goes, what's that? I'm going to walk out.
I remember fruit salad and blackjack. So
but you're pretending just because you're in the room.
No. They're horrible, but I do remember them.
Oh, my...
Aniseed.
This friendship is over. Steve Baker, rescue me, former Conservative Government Minister, joins us right now. A very good morning to you, Steve Baker. First of all, can you tell me, do you remember fruit salads and blackjacks for a penny or less?
Well, of course I do. I'm quite old. I'm sure I'm much older than you. Yes, I remember with delight blackjacks. So, I mean, the idea of disliking blackjacks, I mean, that's for the birds.
See, get out. Go on, Tom. Leave. Just leave now. Thank you very much, Steve. You're my only backer today. I appreciate that. Right, look, let's talk about the serious stuff. I want to know what you're going to spend your 86 pence a week saving on.
Well, this is an absolute classic of government seeing things from government's point of view, because it's costing them a large sum of money. I'm not sure how many billions. They think it's a large sum of money, but of course, from our point of view, it's practically nothing. It's absolute classic. Government ministers are there as members of Parliament. Indeed, some are in the Lords, but if they're members of Parliament, they represent the public, and they should be saying to officials when they commission briefs and take decisions, let's look at this from the public's point of view. Yeah. And if we're to cut energy bills, we need to do a lot more than this.
And of course, you and I both know, although apparently this was a surprise to Lord Foulkes, Labour peer we spoke to a little bit earlier, that energy bills are going to go up in October by a lot more when the Ofgem raised the price cap than £45 over the year going down. They're going to go up a lot more because of the Iran war and our failure on net zero policies. Now, you've been someone who's been speaking out on the net zero policies long before it was fashionable in your party, under Kemi Badenoch taking over. When the complete lunacy began, you were one of those, you, Craig McKinney and others were speaking out saying how insane it was. How much do the net zero policies, which, as far as we can tell, with the new Energy Secretary Miata van Buller in charge, and with someone who's still so influential, Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary, how much do they cost us compared with this 45 quid a year saving we're apparently going to get in October?
Well, a very large amount. I would encourage people to go to Net Zero Watch's website and have a look at the figures there. Forgive me, I haven't got them at my fingertips, but it's a substantial amount. It'd be hundreds of pounds a year at least, if memory serves. But the papers are all there. I wrote a paper for Net Zero Watch about energy policy, and it reminded me that attention is a scarce thing when government does so much. The National Energy System Operators Chief Executive long ago, I think it was back in the first Parliament I was elected, stood up and said we'd have to get used to using electricity when it was there. Yeah. Not that it would be always on and abundant, but that it would be intermittent. That was what he was saying, and that's what people were planning for. I am so keen to hear why Conservative energy ministers at the time were accepting that as advice. Yep. I didn't notice it happening back then, and to my shame, and I just can't believe that Conservatives allowed this to happen. Now,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Most of this happened under your party's watch. At least Kemi Badenoch has seen the light now, but rather too late, because this stuff could have all been rolled back. But look, we've had an Energy Secretary in Ed Miliband, well, Energy Secretary and Net Zero, Energy Security Secretary and Net Zero Secretary. You can't be both at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. There's no doubt at all he's still going to be pushing this climate change agenda. He's absolutely, evangelical zealot about it, as is the new one, Miata van Buller. Is it even vaguely sensible for any government to say they're going to reindustrialise the nation, they're going to get us back on a safe footing, and they're not going to put up taxes, if we've still got an energy policy, which means we have some of the highest energy costs, both business and domestically, in the world?
Well, you're right. It's not sensible at all. And what we need is a much more free market energy policy. We need to accept that we need gas to cover the intermittency of renewables, and we need to go for a much more aggressive environment to allow nuclear to happen, particularly small modular reactors. The whole point of which, by the way, is just like in any other area of life and engineering, you design the thing once and then roll out many items that you've produced in a factory. That's the idea, rather than having these absolutely gigantic one-off power stations. So that's
which take years and years and often have massive problems because they're all bespoke.
It's absolutely it's the wildest, daftest idea to build everything bespoke each time. So that's the kind of formula that we need: free market, accept gas, and go for nuclear. It's a great appointment to get Ed Miliband away from Parliament and overseas. He can go to the Chinese, and he can go there knowing that the Chinese annual increase in the carbon dioxide emissions, their annual increase, is more than our total emissions. If people go to Our World in Data, they can check for themselves. In that environment, he needs to persuade the Chinese to act. The Chinese, of course, will guffaw at him and do nothing, or do very little more than is in their own interests already. And maybe, just maybe, if we watch closely what happens, we might persuade the public to demand from politicians a sensible energy policy instead of this nonsense of paying for electricity that goes to waste when there's too much wind.
And the incredible mad idea that in a first world country we should start limiting people's use of energy because of shortages. I mean, there shouldn't be a shortage, and there is no country in the world that's got a booming economy that has high energy costs. Those are things that get
energy. Yeah, abundant energy is absolutely fundamental to our civilization and human progress. And anyone who thinks otherwise is ill-informed and not.
It's as simple as that, but it's also absolutely crucial for our defence of our nation as well. It's absolutely vital for development of AI, for industry, for jobs, and for defence. Were you at least, even if you're not the biggest fan of this government, the old one or the new one, were you encouraged by the appointment of Chancellor of John Healey, rather than in particular Ed Miliband, one of the two choices? Everyone thought it was going to be him or Shabana Mahmood as the man in charge of the Treasury when it comes to things like defence spending. He resigned just 6 weeks ago from Keir Starmer's government over the lack of money for defence. Does that at least encourage you that we're going to see at least spending on defence now?
Yeah, like sending Ed Miliband overseas, this is a smart move, because now John Healey, who is relatively sensible for Labour, I quite like him, he now has the problem on his desk of meeting that spending requirement that he resigned over. And between him and Pat McFadden, who is, of course, a Blairite, who's been left in place, one of Starmer's people, whatever the left of the Labour Party says, quite a few people have continued in office. So between Pat McFadden and John Healey, I would say that there is a possibility that the two of them might be willing and able to try and get Labour MPs over the line to vote to cut welfare and increase defence spending.
Well, they might be willing. I think from Pat McFadden's messages to Mandelson, it sounds like, they were leaked, that may be possible. But Andy Burnham is Mr. People Pleaser. He's Mr. like me, nice guy. At the end of the day, he's got 400 Labour backbenchers who also want to keep their jobs and want to keep everybody who's on the payroll, who votes Labour, on the payroll. They're not going to want to cut benefits.
I think what you say is absolutely right. And this is why when I lost my seat, I famously said it's going to be an absolute circus, because we have hundreds of Labour MPs who were telling everybody that austerity is a choice. They're not willing to face up to reality and live in the real world. And unfortunately, if you do that, you end up with consequences you can't avoid. And those consequences will bite them. So, I still have the central view that this Labour government will be a failure. But if you ask me, is there at least some good news? Well, yeah, John Healey and Pat McFadden might try to do the right thing. Will their MPs vote for it? One great thing, which I suspect we've got in common, Andy Burnham has at least backed away from digital ID, and that is a good thing.
That is certainly a good thing, although that full saving isn't really there, because once again we've got another policy, according to Darren Jones, who was looking after that policy, wasn't actually costed. They've got lots of policies that there isn't actually any money for. Just finally, we're going to talk to the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK just a couple of moments about this. What do you make, and going back to Ed Miliband, of him becoming our foreign secretary and dealing with Donald Trump, a man who he has been rather scathing about in future? It was one thing dealing with the Chinese and everyone going through the niceties. Donald Trump doesn't do niceties.
Well, of course, a number of Labour politicians were exceptionally scathing about Donald Trump, including Mandelson, who went on to be the ambassador. It will be interesting to see if Miliband can do the same sort of volte-face. He will need to if he's to have any chance of serving the UK's interests. Let's see if he can pull it off. But this is one of the things that does not impress the public about politicians, saying things that they subsequently go and do a U-turn on. I try always to be at least consistent, and I do that, of course, by speaking the truth as I understand it, but people will possibly guffaw at their radios and their computers over that, but I try.
Yeah, I have to say I can vouch for that. You've always been very, very straight on all these things and stood by your morals and your views, and we commend you for that. Steve Baker, great to have you on the show, former Conservative Government Minister. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Come back in on that.
Well, I think it's just a reminder that the issues that are confronting this Labour government are sort of structural, but they don't want to deal with them. The level of indebtedness that we're dealing with, the state of the public services. Steve made a really good point there, was that even if some of these cabinet ministers in post wanted to do something sensible, will they be allowed to do it? Will the very backbenchers who, to a man and woman, waved in Andy Burnham to much fanfare, be happy as soon as some of those difficult decisions we hear so much about but never seem to be made start to enter the fray? Migration, energy, welfare bill.
We haven't heard anything about welfare. We haven't heard anything about immigration.
And ultimately, because you can tell by some of the things that Burnham has already snuck out, even if they're kind of half statements and indications of what he wants to do, that he recognises he's going to have to do something in these areas. As soon as he tries to do anything, they're going to be an open revolt again. And that's one thing about our politics at the moment. But in a way, particularly the post-2024 Labour Party, is that it doesn't take much for them to kick off. That kind of sense of party discipline has just disappeared for all manner of reasons, and it's not obvious in
a way that just simply didn't happen under Tony Blair at all. It's going to be fascinating. 11:48 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about, well, what will the Americans make of our new Foreign Secretary and indeed our new Prime Minister? We'll talk to Greg Swenson about that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just to let you know, Cabinet Ministers have been attending the Privy Council meeting. There's these advisors, Cabinet and advisors to the Monarch. They're just leaving that meeting. We've also got ministers arriving in Downing Street for the Cabinet meeting that's starting at 12:30. Normally it's around like the 9:30 mark. First Cabinet meeting starting a little bit late. Is these going to be sort of everyone just getting up late? I don't know. Well, they had the early announcement at 6 a.m. about that VAT on energy bills. Nigel Farage has a message that on X that he's going to make make a statement on Andy Burnham's new government at 12 o'clock today. We'll find out what he has to say about that. Right now, though, let's find out what the Americans make of our new Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband. Could have been another Miliband, could have been David Miliband. That was being touted at one point, being brought back to the laws and then brought back as Foreign Secretary. But let's talk to Greg Swenson. He's Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. A very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I mean, as per usual, anyone who gets appointed to a role in a Labour government in particular, you have to deal with, what have they said about the American president at some point in their lives? And what a surprise. Of course, there is a quote from, Ed Miliband. He said some years back that Donald Trump was a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper. Is that going to go down well at the White House?
You know, he's not the first one. I'm thinking about David Lammy had similar comments. There's no shortage of people who have said those things about the president. And then, of course, in retrospect, they look foolish.
Well, he is a self-confessed groper, and I would say he is a misogynist. I think there's evidence that he's racist as well. So it's not completely
I'm
wrong,
not sure about that, Julia. We could go into that for
He said he grabbed women by the...
Yeah, that was and his numbers went up 2 points after that.
So that doesn't make it okay.
No, of course
he is a self-confessed groper.
But look, there's been many comments about that, even from Republicans, even from from people in his cabinet, right? So.
So he doesn't. He basically does. He doesn't. I mean, he's been very rude about lots of people. He then appointed himself. Does he? Basically, is it just he's got such thick skin? He just doesn't care.
If you punch him, he'll punch back. That's just the way he is. But he'll kiss and make up as well. And so look, David Lammy ended up having a decent relationship with the vice president, J.D. Vance, as we all know. And so, look, I thought that there was a good move calling the president yesterday. I think there's potential that they can have a much better relationship than Keir Starmer had. That's going to depend on a few things, notably using, the use of the air bases for, for refueling or for launching, air power from the bases, whether it's in the UK or in the Chagos Islands at Diego Garcia. I think, look, it's a Labour government. He's, somewhat socialist. I don't expect lower taxes, massive deregulation, and closing the border to mass migration. I don't get that from a Labour government. But if you can pick a few spots, one is the bases, the other is energy. And you've heard a lot about it. If he can liberate the energy sector, drill baby drill, that will have a great appeal to the president, because the president cares about the UK. He hates to see UK businesses and consumers paying 4 times as much for energy as we pay in the US.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's bothered about that, and he just thinks that the policy is, as he rightly is right about, is insane. The thing is, I suppose the Foreign Secretary doesn't come into contact with the head of state that much. They're going to be meeting the other foreign secretaries, the US Secretary of State. But I mean, the thing about Ed Miliband is, even though he's left the energy brief, he is a zealot. I mean, he is a true believer on this issue. He's going to be taking this message around the world, and he's very earnest about it. I would say hysterical, borderline. I can't imagine that's going to go down well with any in the US administration.
That is absolutely right, Julia. And on one hand, it's nice moving him out of the energy position and into something where he can possibly be less destructive.
Although his replacement in energy is equally zealous.
Just as loony, Well, look, this is not going to be a sell in the U.S. Even when Joe Biden embraced net zero and the Green New Deal and spent $700 billion of taxpayer money on frivolous energy projects, the people never went for it. It never polled above number 7 as an issue in the U.S.
And crucially, even under Biden, America kept drilling, kept fracking, it kept drilling for oil and gas.
Yeah, I mean, look, he came out of the gates very hostile to the sector. So for the first 2 years, energy prices were higher than they are now. The gas prices in the U.S. were higher in 2022 than they are even during this short-term supply crunch. So that and the U.S. had become the swing price in the Trump 1.0. So, it really did have an effect on energy, even though we were still drilling. But, you know, just 1 million barrels a day can swing the prices much higher, and that's what happened with Biden. Then he got smart in his last 2 years and backed away from it. But not without blowing, you know, almost $1 trillion of my money.
Well, yeah, that's it. But that said, looking at Ed Miliband, you know, he was Labour leader back in 2015 when we didn't go in to help people in Syria. We saw, again, people say, well, we learned the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan. He was the one who led that vote in Parliament to stop David Cameron. And again, I don't think it should have been a vote in Parliament. I think that's an executive power decision. But he, you know, he's one of those anti-war people, which means nothing in my view. It's just student politics. But I mean, you know, that has had a massive impact. This is a man who led the battle in the last cabinet against Britain offering its bases to US forces to carry out attacks on Iran, again, which I thought were totally justified defensive acts. I can't see this relationship going well.
I don't think so either, but hopefully Ed Miliband will be dealing with other people. Of course, he'll be dealing with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I'm not sure he's going to be, he'll spend a lot of time one-on-one with the president. You know, that's for the prime minister, really. And look, you know, I think he's the worst choice for foreign secretary, but he was going to land somewhere, and maybe he does less harm there than he would as chancellor. I think Ed Healy was the most sensible choice. And I agree with Steve, your prior guest. You know, abundant energy is not only is it critical for the people, but it might be a place where he can sort of lean to the right a little bit.
Yeah, that would be certainly interesting. It was interesting, though, a White House senior official said to the Telegraph today they were deeply concerned about Ed Miliband's appointment and said that there would be a point of friction in the transatlantic relationship. We simply can't afford to do that given the state of our economy.
That's right. That's right. It's so critical for the UK right now. And again, I don't expect the Prime Minister to take 5 pages out of the Trump playbook, but if he can take 1 or maybe 2, you know, fix the migrant crisis and then liberate the energy sector, that's going to be good for the people. And I think the President really does care about that.
Well, that would be a nice thing if it did happen. Thank you very much indeed, Craig Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. We'll get more from Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, coming up next. We're also going to get a statement we expect from Nigel Farage on his thoughts on Andy Burnham's new government. He's going to give that after 12. Going to get to your calls, your messages about what you spent in your 86p on your weekly saving. Going to be talking about Shabana Mahmood continuing as Home Secretary, and the Village holding a vote to leave the UK over plans to house more migrants. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or you connect to us, thank you, as always, for your company. If you've missed anything from the show, and why would you do that? Go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about this new cabinet. What does it tell us about what Andy Burnham is going to do as Prime Minister? John Healey as Chancellor in particular, that good move for defence, surely. Very much not a factional role, but 11 sackings yesterday. Most of them completely deserved, I think we can safely say. But as the people who've replaced them, are they going to be any better? That is the question. We're also going to be talking about what you're going to spend your 86 pence a week extra saving you're going to get from October on your electricity bill, as the Prime Minister announced this morning. Not the Chancellor, initially, the Prime Minister announced. They get all the credit for the good stuff that we like, that we are going to see a 5% current rate of VAT on your electricity bills. That's going to be cut to 0%. I'm quite rightly fully support that, and we're going to save £45 on average in our household bills from October when that comes in. The trouble is, A, that's only 86 pence a week, and the other trouble is that actually our Ofgem price cap is going to go up in October. We know that's going to happen. That is already priced in which case that's going to be eating up all of that £45 a year savings. So if you are going to spend that money, it's going to be in your head, and apparently you could spend it on a lot. And we've looked it up. Those penny chews that I was talking about, the blackjacks and the fruit salads, Yes, they do still exist. I think I'm going to have to order some. They do still exist, but no, they are no longer a penny, or indeed 4 for a penny, as one of our callers said when he was young. I'd love to know what you're going to spend your 86p a week saving on. Get in touch. Also going to be talking about the BBC. David Dimbleby, he's called the sweeping cuts and programme closures at the BBC appalling. I like David Dimbleby. I did a hell of a lot of question times with him, but you're wrong about that, David. They could cut the BBC budget by half, and none of us would notice. I mean, they could just stop the budget for doing stuff on trans and drag queens, and that would save a good few billion quid. Also, a court has ruled that an Eritrean migrant who had a protruding Adam's apple and a 5 o'clock shadow long before 5 o'clock was not, in fact, an adult. He was a child, as he claimed, despite giving, I think, 5 different ages when he arrived. Our courts are in a lot of trouble, and this was a very senior tribunal judge who made this decision. We're going to talk about that. And also a wonderful story about a village that is holding a vote whether to leave the UK over plans to house more than 1,000 migrants on a former military base. I am loving this. We need to have more of these polls. We're also waiting for a statement from Nigel Farage about Andy Burnham's new government, which he would make around this time. Now, we were hoping to speak to our friendly MP, independent MP for Hollies. I would have thought by now, surely a Labour MP again, Carl Turner. Unfortunately, he is now currently travelling and cannot get on the line right now. So we're going to turn things around a little bit. Another little chat with Tom Slater. I'm going to get to your call, so do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. 2 questions today. 1, what does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about his priorities for governing Britain? Are there some posts you're happy about, what you're most worried about? Do get in touch. Also, what you're going to spend your 86 pence a week saving on from October. Don't spend it all at once now. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. I wonder, what is that network rate message? Is it less than 86p? You could spend it on texting me. There you go. Tom Slater, what do we think our good friend Nigel Farage is going to say about Andy Burnham's new government? I imagine he's going to welcome all of the appointments.
I think so, in the spirit of conviviality and bipartisanship, so that, you know, at least finally we've got a cabinet and a man in power that we can respect. He's definitely going to renew his call for a general election, isn't he? And that's going to be a bruise that Reform are going to continue to
Tories have been quiet about that.
They have been.
They're only calling for it because they know they're not going to get one.
Well, there is that. I mean,
they're not ready.
I mean, in the same way that the Tories don't want a general election because it's not going to go well for them, Reform are not ready for a general election either. I think it's fair to say.
Do you think the public, but people say, the majority of the public, according to these polls, Mail keeps doing this, they say, you know, you've got no mandate. OK, there is a moral argument on the mandate. There is not a constitutional argument on that. But do you think the British public actually want a general election, or we would get that woman going, oh, not another one?
I don't know. I think people are particularly angry with the Labour Party at the moment. I think there was the Burnham bounce, such as it is. It can be detected in some polls, not others. I think
the Burnham bounce was before he even took over.
Well, this is it. I think it's become a bit of a wash, and I think the shine will come off of him quite quickly. And it is worth saying that, yes, in our system, it's members of Parliament who select the Prime Minister rather than them being directly elected as if you were the President of France or the President of the United States, what have you. All that being said, I think people come to expect that a Prime Minister, particularly one who's claiming to break not only with his predecessor, but with 40 years of neoliberalism. You would
Everything went wrong under Blair and Brown, apparently.
Exactly. You expect them to seek a mandate. Also, I think Andrew Neil's made this point. If you look at how it stacks up, this is someone who not only has no mandate from the people, he didn't even stand on the 2024 Labour manifesto, which he is now kind of duty-bound to implement.
Keir Starmer didn't appear to think he was duty-bound to implement it,
There is that, but it didn't. The leadership election, because he stood basically unopposed, meant that even Labour members didn't get to have their say. So it comes down to, what, 25,000 people in Makerfield. And particularly given that he is claiming this is another new dawn breaking in British politics, the lack of a mandate is going to follow him around like a bad smell, I think.
But again, I think there were a lot of people who'd be perfect if they thought there was going to be competence and the right things were going to get done. The trouble is, we kind of all disagree on what the right things are. And this is the thing, when he says he wants an end to division and factionalism, that's all very well. But you can have that if you have a dictatorship. I mean, that's the reality. Democracy is about division. It's about me saying, I think the top priority should be this or that. Like, for instance, do you think the top priority should be freedom or equality equality, or now as the left want equity, which is a very bad thing. That's literally the opposite of freedom, and I would say the opposite of equality of opportunity as well. But, you know, which do you think are two? That's kind of the divide between the left and the right, isn't it? Left think equality, and the right think freedom, and actually delivering the greatest good, you know, the greatest happiness, the greatest number of people. And then you've got the divide, even with the same aim, of what does that mean and what's the best way of delivering it?
Yeah.
You know, is that, you know, having state-run things or freedom, or is it price controls? Is it, you know, we can also, I mean, it's like, do you think it's bad that a lot of people are on benefits who could be working? Yes. OK, what are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to coax them back. We're going to, you know... But it depends on your views on the motivations of people. For instance, you know, I don't think you're going to get most of these people back to work by giving them a bit of extra help. I think you're going to get back to work by saying, I'm so sorry, you're not eligible for benefits. You're going to starve if you don't go to get a job. I think that will actually be the kindest and best thing you could do for a lot of these people. And so it depends on what you think people's motives are, how you can achieve something, and what you want to achieve. So say, I want an end to division. Well, that's great. So what? We're not allowed to have a differing view on these things. No. And your whole point is democracy is about debating those, putting those ideas to the people, and the people saying which one they most agree with.
No, I think that's absolutely right. When people say they've had enough of division, it often can mean we've had enough of discussion, we've had enough of debate, we've had enough of your particular perspective, the restive public who voted for Brexit, they voted for the Tories who are eyeing up reform at this point. And they're called divisions in the House of Commons for a reason. You have to take a stand one way or the other, not just on a piece of legislation, but on the big political and philosophical issues as well. Division and even polarisation to a certain extent is healthy. It means that the big ideas are on the table.
Doesn't mean you have to slag someone off or say they're a bad person because they disagree with you.
Because what's really bad is when you've got the main parties dancing on the head of a pin, no real political choice. Doesn't matter who you vote for, you get the same policies.
And you get, for instance, net zero or high immigration. Those weren't even options.
You vote blue or red, you'd still get green. All of that has now actually been starting to shake up, and that's really positive, not least because a lot of those policies that there was a consensus about were bunk, but also because people deserve political choice. It's healthy. So this kumbaya routine, you kind of understand it. It sounds good when you hear it on the radio, I suppose, but it usually is a byword for emptiness, but also let's just keep going with the programme that we have done recently. In a way, Burnham, for all of his talk of being
something rough sleepers,
he is the continuation of really the way in which politics has been done in so many ways. That kind of mix of trundling along economically, greenism, multiculturalism. He's not really going to change any of that.
No, indeed. Can I say we've now got all the cameras back in Downing Street today with members of the Cabinet entering for their first Cabinet meeting under this government. It's going to start at 12:30. I have to say, I think particularly for the women, because there's so much scrutiny of what the women wear, like, you know, what Andy Burnham's wife was wearing and things yesterday. That walk, especially if you're in heels and you haven't perhaps chosen your underwear well, ladies, just saying. Underwear could be your friend. That's a terrifying walk in heels, you know, on tarmac up a step or two. I do feel for them, whoever it is. By the way, I've got some of the messages coming in about what does Andy Burnham's first cabinet tell us about his priorities for governing Britain. Ron's message say, Julia, you criticise him no matter what he does. Well, no, I've praised him. I've said, I wrote a tweet this morning saying, good, cutting the VAT. But my point is...
You've praised his eyebrows on many occasions.
I like him as I think he's a nice bloke. I want to see some... I'm old-fashioned. I like to see actual policies that make a difference and is joined-up thinking. I know it's a weird idea, but just...
Is Ron impressed, though? Who is really impressed by this, personally? I mean, maybe I just don't see it. I get that he's more of a kind of emotionally intelligent, shall we say, kind of political leader than we've had previously. But... I think this is really thin gruel. A bit of hope he changed and talk about his favourite Stone Roses songs. I'm just not interested.
I want some actual policies that are going to change people's lives. And I honestly, and I could live with, and I think it's very likely, you know, I will see my taxes go up. If my taxes were going up and that money was being spent on defence, on education projects, on you know, building nuclear power stations, on doing something useful, as opposed to paying layabouts sit about at home claiming they've got depression, then I would actually be fine with it, as long as I thought... But it's not going to happen. Yeah. So, you know, let's get to your calls. I'm waiting on the line. John is in Sutton. John, what do you want to say?
Yes, I wanted to say I seriously question Burnham's judgment in putting Wes Street in defence.
Why?
Why? Because he hasn't got a clue what he's doing. We face serious threats, Julia, not just Britain, but the West in general, from Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. You've got cyber attacks. We've got enemy submarines monitoring our undersea cables, threatening to cut them and our pipelines. And he thinks the biggest threat to Britain, we've even got Islamic domestic terrorism. He thinks the biggest threat to Britain is nationalism.
Is what?
Nationalism.
Oh,
he said.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh well, I mean, to be fair, we've had plenty of prime ministers who said that.
Okay, so we got Scottish nationalism. It's not an immediate threat. They're not going to leave the UK anytime soon. We got Plaid Cymru, who had to compromise all their beliefs to get elected. There's no way are they going to take Wales out of the UK.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is he talking about? He's talking about reform UK. We all know that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what he's obsessed with. Not the threats that the West is facing on a massive scale, Britain included.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you on that. Look at, but most of the Labour Party, I think, and actually a lot of the Tories have been claiming for years, climate change is the biggest threat to our country. They're claiming a load of these mad things. I mean, not accepting. And I like to point out, look, he's got no. I'm not holding a candle for West Streeting, but you know, a lot of people saying, well, he hasn't got experience. But I mean, I don't think John Healey had any military experience, did he? Grant Shapps, Philip Hammond, Jeff Hoon, Michael Heseltine, you know, even, I mean, you know, George Robertson, for goodness sake, he was rated. They didn't have any experience.
I know that, but saying that the biggest threat to Britain is nationalism.
Yeah, it's stupid.
It is stupid. He is not the man for the job. You mark my words, it's a big mistake, Burnham, putting him in there.
Maybe he's trying it's one of those things where you kind of basically neutralise him by putting him in a job that he's not going to be. I mean, because he as Health Secretary, he was quite, I mean, I think fairly getting on with it, given what you can do with the health unions, but he's kind of touchy-feely, and I'm not sure that works in defence.
Well, if it kicks off big time and another front opens up in the Indo-Pacific, believe me, that man is going to be found wanting.
Very interesting.
He's going to be in well over his head.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that call. Thank you. Let's go to Paul, who is in Cardiff. Paul, what do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
It's about Mr. Healey.
Yep.
When he was in defence, he resigned because of the shortfall of at least £5 billion.
Oh, and the rest, yeah.
Well, you tell me where he's going to get that from, when the position he's in now.
Well, he said that what he said in his resignation letter in subsequent interviews 6 weeks ago that he thought that the Treasury, having worked the Treasury himself under Gordon Brown, that they should be looking at at war bonds. So, which is how Germany is funding. So you basically have long-term government debt, but particularly for defence.
Whereas one thing saying it is another thing doing it.
There is that. And it will cost a hell of a lot because our borrowing costs are sky high because we've got so much borrowing.
Terrible.
Do you think, of the people who could be appointed to that role, is he the best option, though?
Well, he's better than the other person.
Miliband.
Oh, Millipede, I call him.
You thought, if those are the choices, not such a bad thing. Very interesting. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate that. I mean, that is the big thing, Tom Sater, isn't it? Like, where is he going to get that money from? Lots of messages still coming in. Rose says Andy Burnham's openly preaching about his business-friendly socialism. At least some of it must be true. Mark says Andy Burnham's first cabinet tells us about his priorities for governing Britain. He says it tells us he has zero mandate to rule this country. Thomas says that it's about to get much, much worse. Andrew says, apart from the usual hopey-changey noise and his so-called Manchesterism, we've not had a single word on illegal or legal migration. Nothing will change. I mean, this is, a major, major issue, isn't it? David says more misery awaits. Trey says there'll be no different than the government under Starmer. John says simply they're all grifters. And Fiona says he's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Look, still getting people coming in about what they're going to spend their 86 pence on. Tom says it's a sixth of an average pint in the UK. Yeah, that's how, and that's only in 1 week.
Yeah,
1 week.
In 6 weeks you could.
Finn, though, you can buy a small pack of custard creams. There you go. Or Edward says Hall Soothers. I think I'm going to go for the 2 pints of milk in Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going for with mine, but only once a week. Obs. just once a week. So it's only 86p once a week from October.
He's giving you that much breathing space, but not anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, no more than that. Anyway, 12:18 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to Home Affairs commentator Danny Shaw to find out what he makes of the, well, complete absence of any conversation really about immigration as Shabana Mahmood stays as Home Secretary, and the village holding a vote to leave the UK after 1,000 illegal migrants being pushed onto a former military base nearby. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:21 is the time. Let's talk to my next guest now. He's Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator and former advisor to Yvette Cooper when she was Shadow Home Secretary. A very, very good morning to you. Oh, sorry, good afternoon to you, Danny.
Good afternoon, Julia. Good to be back.
Can I ask you first of all about Yvette Cooper? I'm sure you're still in touch with her, but I mean, she's been demoted from one of the great offices of state. She was Home Secretary, then she was Foreign Secretary, and now she's Health Secretary. A very, very important job, very important to most Brits. Nevertheless, it is a demotion. Why do you think she accepted that role?
I haven't spoken to Yvette since that happened, but I would expect that she feels that it is a huge job and a really important job, running the health service, but also putting in plan for social care. So it's a huge challenge.
It's a bit
she
demeaning,
did work
though,
in the
isn't
health
it?
ministry, I think, briefly before under the previous Labour government. And you're in cabinet. You're at the heart of government. You know, Yvette she is not in it for herself. She's not one of these politicians that creates the headlines and makes the headlines and wants to do it because of her. She wants to do it because she, believes in certain things and wants to improve people's lives and all of those sorts of reasons. And I think that this is probably, it's a big opportunity. Yeah, I am sure that having been moved from the Home Office after sort of just over a year and then being moved from the Foreign Office after less than a year, is not really what cabinet ministers, government ministers want to happen. They prefer to have some continuity and have some time to embed the changes they want to make. But this is politics, and Yvette has been around long enough to know it's a brutal game.
She's still standing, I suppose, the argument. That said, I mean, I don't think she's been a particular success in either of those her last two roles, with all due respect here to her. Let's talk about Shabana Mahmood, though. Staying as Home Secretary, she was very much being touted and seemed to be nailed on by a lot of the so-called Westminster in crowd as the new Chancellor under Andy Burnham. Wonderful bit of a little stage-managed drama in Downing Street yesterday when now, as we know, Chancellor Healey arrived in advance as the first, which everyone thought, well, he must be the Chancellor, and then the shouting out to Edmund Miliband and Shabana Mahmood when they arrived together. We're just showing the picture on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. Arms around each other, like, who's going to be Chancellor? In fact, it wasn't either of them. But there's no doubt at all, Shabana Mahmood wanted to remain at the Home Office. The trouble is, what she's doing at the Home Office is not enough for people like me who want her to take more control of both legal and illegal migration, and certainly particularly on the illegal migration issue, but it is too much for many of the Labour backbenchers. How much of a free hand is she going to have to push through her policies under an Andy Burnham premiership?
I'm really pleased that Shabana Mahmood has got to stay at the Home Office because I think she's doing a really good job, and she's been one of the best Home Secretaries we've had in recent years. She's clear-sighted about what she wants to do. She communicates her message really well, and she's starting to have some results. The policing white paper, probably didn't get so much coverage, but is a really bold, radical plan for change on policing, so she'll be able to drive through the changes there. I think on borders, and the small boat crossings and the asylum hotels, there's some small signs of progress, not enough.
Come on.
But she will be able to hopefully improve on that. And on migration, with the changes to settlement rules and so on, she's going in the right direction. She's probably going to have to make some concessions to get the Labour backbenchers and others on board.
Well, I mean,
there's no doubt about that.
Just explain those. I mean, again, this is about people getting indefinite leave to remain, which they're allowed to apply for after just 5 years. And a lot of people going, well, hold on a minute, especially with the Boris wave, some 2.3 million people, many low-skilled workers, not even earning, average wages, not even net contributors to our economy, even while they are working, let alone if they stayed and were on entitled to benefits and then to pensions, and with numerous dependents as well. The scale of dependents is absurd. More people have come in as dependents than as workers. And the idea was that, those people would be backdated, and those people would, like people arriving from now on, would have to wait 10 years and pass stricter rules to be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain and get those benefits of that. But there's talk about basically not backdating it or allowing those people, them to still apply after 5 years. I mean, the whole point of the policy was to stop those people being able to apply and being able to stay here despite not being a benefit. If she waters that down, she'll have achieved nothing.
No, I don't agree, Julia. I mean, I think there have to be some concessions.
Why?
Because she has to keep the Labour MPs and backbenchers on side, and also
even if they're wrong,
that there are some people who came in the Boris wave of migration who will have been expecting. Let's say you came in 2023.
Yeah.
You will be expecting that in 2028 you'll be given the right to stay in the UK.
Well, the right to apply to
right,
stay.
and suddenly, all of a sudden, you're told, oh no, you're going to have to wait another 5 years or 10 years or whatever. Now,
so what?
in those circumstances, I think it's right that there is a look to see whether that is completely fair on some people who are doing really important jobs for us. That they're
most
being
of them
told
are working
that.
in low-skilled, low-wage work. I mean, yes, it's very important. I've got an aunt in a care home, and the people who work there are absolutely, utterly wonderful. However, we've got plenty of unemployed people in this country who
But they won't do those jobs,
well,
will
they would if it was paid better, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So let's bring in hundreds of thousands of people to do low-skilled work who need housing, who will in a few years' time be eligible for benefits from third world countries, and leave our own people on benefits so we can subsidise care homes. I mean, what a brilliant economic bit of genius that is. Come on.
Well, that was the plan that happened under Labour and Conservative governments.
Yeah, they were all mad.
When migration was used to fill those Labour gaps. And I absolutely agree with you.
Well, except there are still shortages, so it didn't fill the gaps.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. That was a ridiculous policy that went way too far. But if you want to increase the wages to people who work in care homes, and I would be absolutely in favour of that.
I don't want to.
Then it has to be paid for somehow.
The market will have to, if they can't get people, they will do what every single private employer does.
Unfortunately, people will drop out of the market if they can't do it, and then there won't be provision. I mean, that's the other problem, because it's not something just like buying, running a sweet shop or something like that. The sweet shop goes bust because it can't get the customers. We're going to need those care homes. Not quite as simple as that, Julia.
I know it's not quite as simple as that, but there must be a better way of dealing with it.
Agreed.
But this is the thing. Shabana Mahmood is going to end up being it used to be the rule, isn't it, from Theresa May. Basically, no one goes from Home Secretary to Prime Minister, because basically you get blamed for everything that goes wrong, immigration, crime, security, and the Prime Minister takes the credit for everything that goes right. You know how that works. In which case, it's a bit of a poison chalice as a job.
Well, it is, but she seems to relish it, and I think she's doing a good job, and I'm really pleased that she's going to stay. Well,
I think relatively she's doing a good job. That said, I mean, I didn't rate the last lot of Tories doing the job either. Let's talk about a couple of the cases there, because we've still got these insane situations with tribunals on migrants. We've got an Eritrean migrant who's not been named. He arrived in this country. He smuggled himself into the country. And he changed his date of birth 5 times. He was stopped from entering Britain on several occasions. He claimed to be a child repeatedly. He smuggled himself to the country by hiding in the back of a heavy goods vehicle in February 2024. He has a protruding Adam's apple. He's got 5 o'clock shadow. I mean, he can actually grow he's got loads of pictures of himself with a full beard. But he claimed he was a child. The immigration officials believed he was much older than 18 because of his appearance and demeanour. He was assessed as being an adult. He's got wrinkles under his eyes, for goodness sake. And basically, he shouldn't be entitled to any benefits. An immigration hearing in Hillingdon has now ruled that he was a child when he entered the UK. They judged that he was 16 when he arrived. The Home Office asked the taxpayer, is ordered to pay him, now aged 19, £10,000 in legal costs. And basically, he is still in the country. Even though he entered here illegally, he's clearly an adult, but has been allowed to stay on the basis that, well, he probably wasn't when he arrived. But 16-year-olds don't have protruding Adam apples and 5 o'clock shadows and wrinkles under their eyes. We've got tribunal judges making insane decisions.
It does seem like a daft decision to me, particularly according to the report that I've read. 2 Home Office staff said he was significantly over 18. 2 Border Force staff put his age at 28. Yeah. And 2 social workers said he was aged between 22 and 25. And yet the tribunal judge has gone against that advice. According to the report that I've read, I wasn't in the hearing, and have said that actually his date of birth was April 2007 rather than what the Home Office has said, which was February 2005. There could be an appeal against it. I hope there is an appeal against it.
And we're paying for all of the legal costs for that, yeah.
Yeah. What we need to move to, and what the Home Office is trying to move to, is AI, using AI to assess people's age. And I think that there will be improvements in accuracy if that's used.
Don't they use bone marrow testing or something? A really simple test, or dental checks, and it's really easy to age people within a couple of years.
They don't use bone marrow testing. I think they're able to use dental checks, but it's quite a convoluted process. And I don't think it's used very much.
But it's just mad that and again, we wanted to, if you come in as a child, then you're basically going to be here forever. That's the issue. But that's the problem, is people are coming in, they're taking the mick, and we don't get rid of them because we're allowing the mick to be taken. Let me ask you about this story, though. I love this. 350 residents of Piddington in Oxfordshire is a tiny village where more than 1,000 illegal migrants are planned to be housed in a nearby ex-Ministry of Defence site. So almost 4 times the local population is 1,250 male asylum seekers. And locals in the tiny village have pledged to vote on basically a vote to leave the UK. They basically say they want to have a vote and they've a vote on the July the 4th, symbolic for American independence. 96% of villagers said they wanted a referendum on leaving the UK. I mean, shouldn't we all be doing this and saying, no, we leave the UK, we declare our independence, you can't house these people here?
Look, it's a light-hearted story, but actually there's a serious issue at the root of it, and this is the issue. As the government moves to close asylum hotels, there's just under 170 at the moment, and there's 21,000 people living in them. As they move to do that, which is their commitment to do it in the next 3 years, they're going to have to find places for those asylum seekers and those migrants. Yeah. And one of those places that they want to move them to is Bicester Garrison. About 1,200 people they want to move in there, and they are going to get opposition and resistance at every step of the way to these sites that they establish, whether it's homes in multiple occupation, whether it's old college accommodation, student blocks and so on, or whether it's ex-military sites. And that is a massive problem facing Andy Burnham in the next
because
few
the
years.
issue isn't getting them out of hotels or getting them out of houses of multiple occupancy. What people want to do is get them out, full stop. Danny Shaw, great to talk to you. We covered a lot of ground there. Thank you very much. Tom Slater, I mean, just talk about this village. This is Piddington, Oxfordshire, the independent Republic of Piddington, as it's going to be. I mean, I'm loving this. I would love to cover that referendum.
No, it's incredible. The fact that they held a vote to work out if they wanted to vote on the 4th of July.
It's called democracy,
I thought it was wonderful as well. It could even be the 1776 moment. I mean, the details of this are crazy. The fact that if this number of migrants are put in that garrison in Bicester, it would dwarf the size of the village, I think, by 4 times.
Yep.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, you talk about the lack of consent, which is...
Well, local council said they've got no notice. It was just told it's happening.
And this is the problem. Every step of the way, this is just imposed on communities purely because it's out of the way. People aren't paying as much attention, and often because it's cheaper to do it in those areas. That happened with the hotels, it's now going to happen with military bases and everything else that is used. Stop moving the problem around and solve the problem is surely what the government
A, the people shouldn't be in the first place, and B, they should be shipped straight out. We don't want them anywhere, full stop. 12:35 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Vote early, vote often, vote yes. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to a former Labour advisor, now Chief Executive of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, Henry Murison. What does he make of Andy Burnham's first few acts as Prime Minister? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Well, as all the brand new cabinet appointees of Andy Burnham are now in number 10, having their first cabinet meeting with the new Prime Minister. Let's find out what Henry Murison, former Labour advisor and chief executive of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, has to say about what this new government is going to do. Good afternoon to you, Henry.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Let me put the question to you that I've been putting to our audience today. Well, there are two, really, but first one, what does Andy Burnham's first cabinet appointees, what does that tell us about his priorities for governing Britain?
I think you have got people who are genuinely committed to changing the way the country works. Lots of your listeners and those watching online, Julia, look at the country and don't think it works for them where they live. I think having a chancellor that really cares about getting growth going in other parts of the country, who was responsible for setting up and overseeing many of the regional development agencies under the previous Labour government. He's obviously had a long career in the front line of politics. I think having Jonathan Reynolds, who is genuinely committed to getting growth outside London and the South East, but not doing that at the expense of sectors like AI, for example. I think that's the right answer. We want London to be successful, but we also need the North, the Midlands, Scotland, Wales to be successful.
I just want to clarify, did the last government not want that? And people like, say, Jonathan Reynolds, who's back as business secretary, did he not want that when he did that job under Keir Starmer?
I think the difference is that he was business secretary, but then he got moved, Julia. So he was doing those things, but I think the reshuffle that happened, which I think was done from a position of weakness by Keir Starmer, brought people like Steve Reed, for example, who took money for poor areas and used it to give to parts of London based on survey results. I mean, things that were blatantly...
There are lots of very poor parts of London.
There are, but those aren't the ones that Steve chose to give the money to. He gave it to places based on survey results. If they were genuinely the poorest areas, they'd have got the money under the original formula. So I think you have got genuinely people coming forwards under this government who are putting the whole country forwards for growth. That's what the Prime Minister said he wants to achieve. People like Louise Hay, who I work very closely with as Transport Secretary, are formidable people. She was the woman, whether you agree with it or not, who got going with the renationalisation of the railways in her first few months in the job. She's not someone who messes around. And I think a government of doers, Julia, actually, regardless of people's politics, is something that I think you would get on board with. But we don't want
I'm all for people getting stuff done. It's whether what they get done is going to make a difference to people's lives. And I was very encouraged that Andy Burnham said he's dropping the plans for the digital ID scheme. It wasn't going to achieve whatever Keir Starmer said it would achieve, and that could be done easily just by enforcing the current law on allowing people to work illegally. And it was costing unnecessary money. And as Andy Burnham said in an interview with the Times yesterday, it wasn't going to actually improve people's lives. But what is he going to do to improve people's lives? Because there's a lot of talk about reindustrialisation, as you say, about, and you talk about Louise Hagan, renationalisation of some train companies or even, Thames Water, it might be. How is that going to make any difference? I mean, there's no evidence, by the way, that the renationalised train companies are producing more trains, cheaper prices and more punctual. I mean, exactly the opposite, in fact.
I think to take your point about reindustrialisation and then probably the railways, because I think they're two good questions, Julia. On reindustrialisation, in John Healy's own patch in Rotherham, we've done some work in somewhere called the Advanced Manufacturing Park, where you've got Boeing, you've got the University of Sheffield, who've invested significantly along with government to bring some of the most advanced engineering in the world for aerospace to South Yorkshire. Yep. Now, that part of Rotherham has grown in productivity by over 200% in the last 20 years. So you can create good quality, well-paid jobs. And then on the railways, yesterday I was with Mayor Oliver Coppard dealing with the failure of one of the private companies still who runs the East Midlands Railway, where they've dropped the ball. And I do think one of the differences is that it's not just that it's nationalised, it's that for the first time, the person who runs the track is the same person who runs the train. And I think that is bringing some real benefit. So actually I use the East Coast Main Line, which is probably the most efficient and effective of all the long-distance operators, and it's been nationalised for a number of years. So, I mean, as a private sector lobby group, under the previous government, I was for integrating track and train, even if it had remained involving the private sector. So actually, it's the integration of the railway that's having most of the
it was always a hybrid madness, wasn't it? The trouble is, with reindustrialisation and bringing more jobs, and particularly to the regions outside London, which is, because we've got banking and the service and the tourist industry will always do fairly okay compared to the rest of the country, is that energy costs are a huge issue. We've lost Ed Miliband as the Energy Security Secretary, thank goodness, after Foreign Affairs.
I was going to say, I assumed you'd be celebrating, Julia.
Good God, yes. But I'm not celebrating with the new appointment, Mata van Buller, who is, again, full-on eco-green, climate-hysteric zealot, and also, I mean, pretty much a socialist when it comes to her politics in terms of redistribution, equity, rent controls, you name it. I mean, the reality is you can't have a vibrant, growing economy. You can't have mass investment in AI. You can't bring mass industrial factories back if you've got the highest energy prices in the world. It's not going to happen.
So I agree with your analysis, actually, about energy prices completely. And I think Jonathan Reynolds, when he was last business secretary, made that his primary goal, to find ways to get them down.
Well, you can't get them down if you're focusing on net zero. You just can't. Full stop.
I think there is a way. I think there is a way to do it. And the small modular reactors that this government, and I think the last Chancellor Rachel Reeves did a great thing buying small modular reactors from Rolls-Royce made here in the UK, because they will deliver that.
And when are they coming online?
Well, I mean, the challenge is we should have probably made that decision when George Osborne first wanted to do it.
100%.
He left government. And so there's a few years of lag between making good decisions and the benefits.
Aren't they about 8 years away?
Well, I mean, they are years away, but there are things you can do in the short term. And I think I suppose what I'm saying is you need to do the short term things like taking VAT off the bills like they've done today for residential consumers, and do the long term things that solve the problem going forward. But I think there are ways if you do it right, Julia, to find cheaper solutions. And I completely agree, actually, that what we need is safe and secure energy, which means we can't be dependent only on fossil fuels, and we also can't turn away cheap energy. And I think the fact that this Prime Minister is likely to bring on more of our own resources from oil and gas will mean that when prices are high, the UK government will benefit. Well, won't reduce prices for anyone here, but at least the taxpayer will benefit.
But again, they do in every other country, but apparently here is the only place they won't, because of course a large part of our energy prices is actually tax and of course subsidies for a lot of renewables, which aren't cheap, because if they were cheap, they wouldn't need to be subsidised.
Well, the issue is the reason we don't benefit when the price goes down internationally is because we are a net importer. And so unlike the US, where they pay the price that they determine because they export it, the rest, we were always going to need to import some, and so we're always going to be a price taker.
Well, we weren't always a net importer, were we? Okay, we don't know whether with the latest technology, whether we could actually become a net exporter again, given where Norway is with their oil exploration. Let me ask you about, you mentioned that cut, which is the first post-proper announcement we've had from this government just after 6 o'clock this morning from the Prime Minister, interestingly not from the Chancellor. The Chancellor never gets to do the fun stuff. He has to do all the negative stuff, doesn't he? Which is that cut to our energy bills, taking VAT 5% on electricity bills down to 0%. Fully in favour of that. Should have happened a long time ago. However, that is £45 a year on average for the average household from October. As you know, in October, energy price gap very likely to go, well, it will, full stop, it will go up because of the Iran conflict continuing and the lag in the impact of those that limit in oil and gas supplies coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, hitting our energy supplies. Even if we get that full 45 quid, it's the equivalent of 86 pence a week. Now, it's better to have 86 pence off your cost of living rather than put it on. But realistically, when the Prime Minister says he wants to give people a bit of breathing space, does 86 pence a week cut it?
Well, I think the interesting thing, Julia, is I know I've banged on a bit about Rachel and some of the things she did I agree with. She also did take off some of the policy costs in her last budget, which only came through in April. So I must not be the only person who's got a fixed price energy deal who's already paying less than they thought they would be from April. And so I think you've got to look at these things in the round. Clearly, Andy has essentially doubled down on a policy that had already happened under his predecessor. Obviously, today, he emphasises that this is the new bit. Does that make sense? But if you take the quantum of what's happened since April, I think it is still deflationary, and that's what we want, is that we need to keep inflation down so that the Bank of England can keep interest rates lower.
Overall, our bills will go up in October, but they won't go up by quite as much because VAT is being taken off.
Yes, but they did go down in April. But they went down in April a bit, and that's the.
But they're still, as you know, they are way higher than before the Ukraine war.
Exactly, and I think that's where we do disagree, Julie, which is I think that if we could get plentiful, cheaper renewables, then that would have an impact on prices over the longer term.
If coulda, woulda, shoulda, love that, but we're not. No other country's done it. We're not going to do it.
The cheapest is onshore wind, and David Cameron didn't like that because lots of backbench Tories didn't like it. I think I'm always the one to be honest with you, Julia, like you are with your listeners all the time, which is that there are things that are unpopular, like building wind turbines behind people's houses. But if it makes their energy cheaper, if their own village gets cheaper energy, they might go for it.
I would tear every single wind turbine down if it was up to me and rely on the completely reliable and secure energy that we get out of the ground, personally. But and the wind doesn't blow, you still need to have the backup. I build nuclear power stations coming out my ears. But at the end of the day, they take years, and we end up spending 3 times as much on them and take 10 times as long as any other country in the world because we don't do anything properly in this country. But that's the problem. It's all pie in the sky. But I need to ask you, finally, what are you going to spend your 86 pence a week saving on?
Well, I think I probably will spend my 86p on spending some money in the real economy, because we know that in reality, if people go out and spend a little bit more, particularly in our most disadvantaged communities, that keeps small local businesses turning. And I think
that 86p.
I know that 86p isn't a lot of money to you and me, Julia.
It's not a lot of money to anyone.
It is to some people.
I mean, to a 10-year-old.
Well, I mean, I would encourage my not only my 10-year-old, but anyone to think about all the costs on their households. And if the government can do a small amount to reduce them slightly, I think that's still better than doing nothing at all.
All right, Henry Mewison, great to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming on. Former Labour advisor, chief exec of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. Tom said, I've got a lot of time for Henry Mewison. I think a lot of the stuff he says is very versatile. I think my worry is that an awful lot of it is pie in the sky in terms of actually getting stuff done in this country.
No, I think that's fair, and also doing it in the quickest, most effective way possible. I can understand that there is a sort of more reasonable version of the argument for quote-unquote clean, renewable energy. But at this point in time, we need a short, sharp change in direction, I think, particularly in the context of us being, as Steve Baker was pointing out earlier, our annual emissions is what China's emissions are rising by.
And I don't care. I just want people to have free, to have plentiful, affordable, secure energy. And if we don't have that, we ain't going to be entering AI in 21st century, and we ain't going to be able to defend our country. There should be nothing to discuss on that. It's not even worth a conversation. That's how dumb that nonsense is. Anyway, 12:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to Jamie Angus, former BBC World Service Director, about the cuts at the BBC, which David Dimbleby says that are appalling. Meanwhile, despite these cuts, the BBC is planning to spend more on travel and hotel rooms for staff presenters, £250 million, according to documents. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:52 is the time. Let's talk about the BBC. We do that quite a lot at the moment. It's rarely positive, and there's no change there today. Jamie Angus is a former BBC World Service Director who joins us now. He's also a trustee of the Henry Jackson Society. A very good afternoon to you, Jamie.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. Two stories, well, basically around the spending on the BBC and the cost, because, of course, an awful lot of people are no longer paying their licence fee. I can't imagine why. But David Dimbleby, the veteran presenter, in an interview to Radio Times magazine, has called the sweeping cuts and programme closures at BBC appalling. He's labelled the new Director General's tough choices as very bad, cool, including the axing of 550 jobs. He basically says, why on earth have they done that? Axing his favourite show, The World Tonight on Radio 4. He's very unhappy about a number of things going, but this is at a time when the BBC is planning to spend £250 million, £250 million on travel and hotel rooms for staff and presenters. This is the travel costs for senior executives. Round-the-clock taxi services worth up to £63 million, and it's an £11 million increase over the last contract. OK, we've had a lot of inflation since 2018, even though costs are going down. I mean, does the BBC spend its money wisely, Jamie?
But it depends what you want the BBC to do. And I think part of the reason I've been asking whether the licence fee is really the right solution now is that forcing people to pay for the BBC with the threat of criminal proceedings just doesn't feel like the right way to proceed now in this decade and century. And it also means that every time the BBC spends £50 on a taxi fare, people get extremely upset. Yeah. And it just doesn't feel like a sustainable arrangement. I mean, I agree that the next round of cuts are going to be very difficult, are going to affect some really, really important news services, but it's a natural consequence of constantly seeking to defend the licence fee as the best way of funding the BBC, and I think there are better ways of doing it.
But don't they often make really obvious choices? Like, oh, well, we're going to have to cut news, we're going to have to cut some of this big shows, and they deliberately try and, want to cut things which are high-profile things that a lot of very influential people might enjoy watching deliberately, when in fact there's plenty there. Look, you worked there. I've done enough shows there. I know exactly how easily they could cut. I've got no doubt at all they could cut half the staff and you wouldn't notice the difference. You could cut all your funding on drag queen, their drag queen spending, every single trans obsession, an awful lot of the music out. But again, stuff that is easily being provided by commercial radio. There's no role whatsoever, no necessary role for the BBC to do it at all. If they went back to doing core stuff that was actually something that might not be provided by someone who was, a company just wanting to make money, then a lot of people perhaps would have a lot more faith in the BBC. But they can see the money being just thrown around, 1,000 people turning up to Glastonbury Festival, not a single one realising that death to the IDF wasn't an appropriate thing to screen. I mean, even when I've been there, when I used to, well, I'm not allowed on the BBC anymore, I've been blackballed long ago, I'd say, oh, if the show finishes at 11 p.m, could I have a car waiting at 11? And they'd have a car that took me to the studio and they'd leave it waiting on waiting time for like 100 quid while I was on air and wouldn't possibly get in the car. I thought that was insane and frankly, obscene waste of taxpayers' money.
I think what you're asking is, do you want a BBC that only does things that the market can't provide? Or do you want a BBC, as it is currently, that does a bit of everything for everyone? Personally, I don't think the BBC should only do market failure activity. I think it should offer some kind of universal service. But that's expensive, right? It's going to cost billions of pounds every year. And as we go into the next charter renewal process, the culture secretary and the management of the BBC, the government, have to agree how big do you want the BBC to be and what do you want it to do, and then have a sensible discussion about how much of that it spends on costs. And that's what needs to happen over the coming year.
The trouble is, there's an awful lot that is spent on stuff that, frankly, no one watches.
Well, some of the value of the BBC might not be measured in pure audience size. So, I used to run the BBC World Service, which did incredibly important work all around the world, often for quite small groups of people who desperately needed its services. So there are different ways of measuring what the value of the BBC does. And that's why I think there needs to be a big discussion about how big is the BBC going to be, what services is it going to provide, and then resource those services adequately so that everyone can get behind it. Because, of course, in the UK, 8 out of 10, 85%, 8 out of 10 people are still using the BBC services every week, but not all of them want to pay for it. No. And that is a conundrum that really needs to be sorted now.
No, well, I'm rapidly moving towards the end of the licence fee, mainly because of their coverage of trans issues and women's safety and Israel, which I think they've just lost all moral claim to be someone we're forced to fund. Jamie, really appreciate you joining us. Jamie Angus, former BBC World Service Director. Thank you. Tom Slater, very briefly.
Well, I think we can all see the low-hanging fruit. Get rid of BBC Verify. Get those journalists to verify their own story. Were they not doing that before?
Shouldn't you be doing that when you before you write it?
Farming it out to poor Mariana and
no, but also I just don't think we need 8 stories about drag queens every week.
That would also help.
I really think that we could probably.
Might not be a big part of the budget, but no one would be sad to see it go.
No, honestly, you take me in there. I can get you half your budget back in a week. I'm telling you, the number of people there who do absolutely nothing. Nothing. Trust me. Also, by the way, Nigel Farage has finally waited quite a long time for this, mate. But he's been at a rally in Norfolk and he's called on Andy Burnham to do the decent thing, he says, call a snap election. He has no mandate whatsoever. He says he didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change to British politics